Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Become a Superman and become invincible. Chapter 1. Leon, I hope you can take care of yourself in the future. Brother, I don't know if I can successfully break through tomorrow. Another early morning, Leon woke up to the sound of calling in his ears. At this time, the golden sunshine filled his whole body, like a handsome knight in his sleep who was lit with holy light. His black hair was straight, his eyelashes trembled slightly, and they opened suddenly, and there seemed to be a bright light rising in his black pupils, as dazzling as the sun. Tony. Leon subconsciously shouted a name. Tony Stark, the biological son of his adoptive parents and his brother, had just called him in a farewell tone, but there was no Tony beside him. He immediately realized. Something happened to Tony. How could it be? Wait, did he not listen to my advice in the end and go to Afghanistan? This arrogant guy, I've obviously emphasized this to him so many times. Leon wordlessly reached out and tapped on the electronic display beside him. Intelligent systems react quickly. With a click, the restraint around Leon's waist was untied, and the next moment he floated gently in the air. It's not just him. Around him, paper towels, plates, tape, all kinds of messy items were just like him, floating in the air without any rules, like a group of plankton submerged in a pool swimming freely. But this is not a pool, but the interior of a manned spacecraft. The bed that Leon used to sleep was not a bed, but a titanium alloy plate fixed to the cabin. He was tied to this board day and night, facing the scorching sun all the time. You can eat fruit puree when you are hungry, drink nutrient solution when you are thirsty, and when you need to go to the toilet, you can directly control the intelligent system to solve the problem on the spot. It can be said that it is no different from growing on a titanium alloy plate. Counting the time, he has been living like this for half a year. Although I didn't get enough sunshine for the 2.5 years I planned, even if I only get sunshine for half a year, it's enough. Leon clenched his fists in the air, feeling the strength in his body as never before. At this moment, every cell and every drop of blood in his body was full of power. When the sun's rays shone on his bare body, it traced across his chest and arms along his perfect muscle lines. He seemed to be able to hear his cells cheering, and his blood flowing like a glacier thawing into a river. This is the power of Kryptonians. Leon sighed through the 2-meter-high transparent aerospace porthole in front of him, looking at the huge sun hundreds of millions of kilometers away. It has been almost 19 years since he came to this world. He never thought that he would gain enough power to overturn the world so easily. Looking at the deep starry sky outside the window, Leon couldn't help but recall his past. Leon Stark, a time traveler. In his previous life, his name was Liang, and he was just an ordinary office worker. He thought he would live an ordinary life. Unexpectedly, when I was riding the subway home one day, I was stabbed several times to death because I acted bravely to stop a mentally ill patient who was wielding a knife. When he opened his eyes again, he was already an almost 1-year-old baby. He traveled through time, or was reborn, and did not awaken the memory of his previous life until he was 1 year old. As for the memory before 1 year old, because the brain is not fully developed, it can be said that there is almost no memory. In this world, he was originally an abandoned baby, and was adopted by Howard Stark by chance. The first thing he saw in the world after awakening his memory was Tony Stark's crying face. Poor Tony's face was full of tears, and his eyes were frighteningly red from crying. He held him in his arms without saying a word. Later he learned that on the day he awakened his memory, Mr. and Mrs. Stark died in a car accident, and he was the only survivor in the car. At that time, he was tightly pressed under a ball of baby wraps and dumped casually on the roadside. His neck was roughly wrapped twice in the wraps. A few meters away was the flaming wreckage of the car explosion. Doctors said it was a miracle that he survived, and it was the last miracle left to the world by the Starks. Perhaps Tony also recognized this statement. He regarded Leon as the continuation of his parents' life, so he really raised Leon like his own brother. Therefore, starting from the facts, rather than saying that Howard Stark is Leon's adoptive father, it is better that Tony is the one who became both a father and a mother. Of course he didn't do a good job. After all, what kind of good father would hang his 2-year-old son around his neck, go to a cocktail party to seduce a cover girl, and then come home at night and put his son on the sofa to spend a long night with a beautiful woman? Fortunately, Tony met Pepper Potts later. With Pepper's care, Leon got rid of the dilemma of being so noisy that he couldn't sleep every night. In those sleepless nights before, Leon made a mental note to Tony, saying that when you go to Afghanistan, we will see if you can still date the cover girl. Leon knew that according to the development of the original plot, Tony would have to go to Afghanistan sooner or later. He had basically watched all the Marvel movies in his previous life. When he heard the names of his adoptive parents and brother, he knew what kind of world he had traveled to. To be honest, the danger index of the Marvel world is not low. Not to mention the supervillains who always show their faces and receive a lunchbox, causing a large number of civilian casualties. Just saying that if the time of traveling through the Marvel world is wrong, Loki, the god of story, has not yet ascended the throne of time. As soon as the time traveler landed, he might not even have time to let out a few loud cries before the heavily armed employees of the Time Management Bureau would have to kidnap him and eliminate him. Fortunately, although he was frightened, Leon still lived to the age of 18 smoothly. He speculates that the timeline of the multiverse may have been disrupted, and the sacred timeline no longer exists. This is a good time to travel through time. However, this still does not affect the fact that the Marvel world is extremely dangerous. Especially when he has a close relationship with Tony Stark, one of the protagonists of the story. And in this world, there is a chance of encountering a villain whenever you go out. He waited for 18 years, but he still didn't get his golden finger. It doesn't have the same IQ as Tony, nor the mutations like Spider-Man, nor the standard system for time travelers. He could only comfort himself that at least he could travel through time and live an extra life, so he would not lose anything. Besides, what he was traveling through was not the dark and deep world like the Lord of Mysteries, Taoism, and perfection, so he could just have fun secretly. But even though he was just an ordinary person, he still used his prophetic advantage to make some changes within his ability. In 2006, at the age of 16, Leon, who did not wait for the arrival of the Space-Time Administration, chose to try to change the world. He used the plot prophet to guide Tony and try to create advantages. First, he guided Tony to develop a series of new civilian technology electronic products such as smartphones and tablet computers that were only available after 2007. Driven by these high-tech products, Stark Group is now more than just an arms company. The group's business scope has greatly expanded. It is already the well-deserved #1 company in the world. In addition, Leon also tried his best to guide Tony in developing the arc reactor. It's a pity that Tony never thought about research in this area, and always ignored it on the grounds that this kind of technology is not possible yet. In fact, it's just that this guy refuses to put in the effort to study. After all, in the first half of Tony's life, there was no technological product that he could make with just a click of his head. Even for cross-generational products such as smartphones, he heard Leon say, "It would be great if the phone could be turned into a screen and could be clicked directly with your hands," and then he developed it in a blink of an eye. Tony was too lazy to study the arc reactor, and there was nothing Leon could do. After all, no one could persuade a stubborn donkey to turn back. In 2 years, the changes brought about by Leon have come to an end. He is like a hard-working bee, looking for destiny that can change everywhere. He also tried to find Bucky's whereabouts and avenge the Starks. Or expose Obadiah and send him to jail. Unfortunately, in the end, these goals were not achieved. Obadiah was very hidden until a year ago when he caught him and told Tony. But Tony is too emotional, and even if he has doubts, he is still willing to believe his uncle. Just having an in-depth conversation with Obadiah, Tony easily felt that everything could be solved. Faced with this helpless situation, Leon could only emphasize to Tony again and again that he could not relax his vigilance and could not go to war zones like Afghanistan alone. As for looking for Bucky, Leon couldn't even put it out there. The world of Hydra's power is deeply intertwined. He is an ordinary person, and if he investigates rashly, he will only expose himself, and then meet the same ending as Howard. He couldn't even tell Tony. On the one hand, as the younger member of the family, he has little say, and Tony may not necessarily believe what he says. Tony is almost 20 years older than the protagonist. On the other hand, even if the source of the intelligence is not mentioned, it is just to guide Tony to think. With Tony's arrogant temperament, he would definitely use Jarvis to invade various confidential agencies as soon as he becomes suspicious. At that time, it will only lead to Tony and him to face Hydra's vigilant assassination. Maybe the one who comes to kill people is still an old boy like Bucky. In the end, this old comrade of the American team will be able to achieve Stark's 4 kills. In Marvel, ordinary people are so powerless, even if Leon is Stark. His position in this world is like Justin Hammer of Hammer Industries. He has money, but that's it. At most, he just has a genius brother. Fortunately, all this changed on the day of my 18th birthday. On his 18th birthday, Leon rolled over the edge of the bed when he got up. Everything at home became fragile to him, breaking if touched and cracking if touched. As if overnight, he had traveled to a world made of hydrogen, where every brick and tile was as thin as paper. After Tony heard the noise, he kept saying, "Oh my God," in the mess, gave up the plan of holding a birthday party, and quickly gave him a full-body examination. The strength is 30 tons, the speed is 100 meters per second, and the body cannot be penetrated by a knife. Overnight, everything changed, and the changes don't stop there. Leon could feel that he was still getting stronger under the sun. Tony also confirmed through research that Leon's cells will continue to be active and undergo a jump-like improvement after being exposed to sunlight. "This is simply Superman," Tony exclaimed dumbfounded. "I wouldn't be surprised if you come back with a heat ray tomorrow." Leon was stunned for a moment, and suddenly understood his own changes, and nodded. "Tony, you were right, I am really a Superman now." A mysterious message appeared in his mind. Reaching the age of 18, unlocking the gifted abilities from the original world, awakening the Kryptonian bloodline, and awakening the ability to travel through time and space. Needless to say, the Kryptonian ancestry is the signature race of the 600th world next door, and it can become stronger by basking in the sun. But unfortunately, he seems to only have ordinary Kryptonian blood. Just relying on the sun will probably not reach the level of Silver Super or Golden Super in the end. The ability to travel through time and space is exactly what it says on the tin. As long as he has enough reserve energy, he can travel through other time and space at will. As for whether to travel within the scope of the Marvel Universe, or whether to escape from Marvel and reach a broader universe, it remains to be tried. But no matter, his golden finger finally arrived. Leon's joy was beyond words, and he hugged Tony and cheered. So Tony immediately broke 2 ribs and shoulder blades as a mark of respect, and was admitted to the operating room that day. At night, Leon stayed by Tony's bedside, feeling annoyed at his carelessness and wondering how the golden finger could still be delivered on time in his adult life. 18 years of his time were wasted. If he could awaken his bloodline and bask in the sun since he was a child, he might be able to do whatever he wants now. Maybe when he was 1 year old, when the Howards were assassinated by Bucky, he could take the opportunity to fight back. Is it possible that Golden Finger also has anti-addiction rules for minors these days? But he also lived for more than 20 years in his previous life, so why is he a minor? Leon was puzzled. 3 months later, after a discussion with Tony, Leon applied to the university for 3 years of late admission. Get on the manned spaceship built by Tony himself and fly into the deep space of the universe. The spacecraft has been sailing in an orbit between the Earth and the Sun. There is no day or night here, every minute and every second is full of sunshine. Half a year has passed. 180 days. Leon tied himself to the titanium alloy plate throughout the entire process, facing the sun's rays. He could feel the raging power running like a river in his body, setting off huge waves all the time. Even his breath carries great power, like a majestic wind and thunder. The original plan was to bask in the sun for 2.5 years. By then it would be the eve of the Chitauri invasion. I should have enough strength to protect myself. He clenched his fists, but now it seems that even half a year is enough. Leon was a little cautious. More than 10 years of uneasy experience in the shadow of the space-time administration, giving him a severe phobia of lack of firepower. Whenever he went out, he wished he could bring a mercenary team with him, each carrying a machine gun and a rocket launcher. After the Kryptonian bloodline awakens, he has the qualifications to pursue power. He even wished he could plunge directly into the sun and sleep for 10 or 8 years before coming out again. Today, He is not said to be a seeker, but he can be regarded as possessing the mentality of an ascetic monk who diligently pursues power. Get stronger. Keep getting stronger. Become stronger than everyone. More than 10 years of restlessness have filled Leon's heart with a desire for power. No, it's not enough, it's far from enough. Leon denied the complacency that had just emerged in his heart in the next second. He clenched his fists tightly, and his marble-like muscles were knotted. I have only been exposed to the sun for half a year, and I am already starting to feel complacent. I really deserve to die. The power of a Kryptonian is not enough. I only have the blood of an ordinary Kryptonian. There is a limit to how much I can just bask in the sun. In order to become stronger, I won't do Krypton. No, my next step is not only to bask in the sun, but also to find more sources of power. Magic, technology, martial arts, everything is good. First try all the ways to become stronger that you can find on Earth. After half a year of exposure to the sun, Leon has now awakened all the abilities of the Man of Steel Superman. Heat rays, freeze breath, bio-force fields, including super brains. With his super brain, he can now learn knowledge and abilities at an unprecedented speed. Reading a book to learn a technology is as fast as using a disk to copy electronic data. From now on, what will limit him will only be the speed of knowledge input, not the speed of understanding and comprehension. Leon can now say something arrogantly. The speed at which a few bytes of language can instill knowledge is as slow as a snail crawling on the ground. But before that, Leon tilted his head and cast his eyes faintly on the earth. His ears moved slightly, and his vision shifted in the direction of Tony's voice, passing through layers of barriers. The bulkhead of the spacecraft, the Earth's atmosphere, the dust on the surface. Except for lead, nothing in the world can block his gaze. In less than a second, he saw Tony, who was sleeping in a cave in the Afghan desert. Whether it's Obadiah, Bucky, or Hydra, it's time to put an end to these things. After 18 years of being solemn, I suddenly awakened my bloodline, and now I am reborn after all the dust is gone, and I know that I am who I am. With strength comes confidence, although I feel from the bottom of my heart that these powers are still far from enough. But Leon also knows that he is indeed qualified to do some little things on Earth. Tony, I'm here to save you, Leon said softly. He casually took a pair of trousers floating in the air and put them on, then floated forward and pushed forward gently with his right hand. Everything is silent in a vacuum. No sound. That space cabin door cannot be damaged even if it is hit by a huge impact of tens of thousands of tons. In an instant, it slowly fell down like a thin piece of clothing, gradually drifting away in the universe. Leon lowered his head and floated out of the cabin. He stands between the Earth and the sun. The golden sun shines all over the body. On the other side is the blue Earth. He looked up at the sun and looked down at the Earth, as if he was already a god in the world, and he could lift the sky and support the Earth with just a single movement of his hands. But Leon knew it was all false. He still has a long way to go. Suppress the pride rising in my heart again. Leon leaned over, paused slightly, and then broke through the air in an instant, heading straight towards the Earth. Boom. As soon as he entered the atmosphere, a sonic boom occurred around Leon. His speed even exceeds the speed of the second universe. After entering the atmosphere, his figure split the entire sky into two. The huge air pressure generated by the ultra-high speed cuts through the sea of clouds. The invisible air waves tore apart the floating clouds in the sky, and suddenly took shape at this moment, surrounding Leon and dragging a long trajectory high in the sky like an air shield. It was like a snake of the world descending from the sky, falling into the world, and would devour everything it encountered. When approaching the ground, Leon began to slow down, with a deceleration of more than 5,000 meters per second. He must slow down. If he lands at full speed, even if he uses a biological force field for protection, it will cause widespread damage to the surrounding surface. The distance between the spacecraft and the ground is 30,000 kilometers, and the flight from North America to Afghanistan is tens of thousands of kilometers. It took him less than 20 minutes. Leon hovered over Afghanistan, and all the clouds above his head were pushed away by the air waves. It's cloudless here at the moment, it's about 10 o'clock at night. Leon did not stop, twisted his body in the air, and continued flying east. This time his speed was very slow, more than 200 meters per second, not even exceeding the speed of sound. Like an invisible ghost, he flew above the cave where Tony was imprisoned. "Tony, it's time to wake up," Leon whispered as he saw Tony frowning and sleeping in the cave. Then he fell rapidly downwards like a meteor. Boom. The hard mountain covered with rocks was no better than tissue paper in front of Leon. He pierced through more than 10 meters of rock and soil and entered the cave. Leon fell from the ceiling of the cave and landed in front of Tony's bed in a pretentious squat, which was very similar to Tony's posture in the movie when he appeared in a suit. From the breach in the cave roof, pieces of gravel fell with him, large or small, making continuous crashing sounds in the cave. Boom, bang bang bang, vibrations, loud noises, continuous shaking and continuous loud noises. Anyone who is sleeping is awakened by such a movement, and they will think that the world is about to be destroyed. Tony was no exception. He had been sleeping lightly, but he was instantly startled awake by the sound of Leon penetrating the cave. Then he was frightened and screamed by a series of loud noises. "Those guys are coming." His face was full of panic, subconsciously thinking that it was terrorists who couldn't wait to come in. A terrorist organization kidnapped him, and the leader of the organization asked him to build a batch of Jericho missiles. Tomorrow is the final delivery date set by him and the other party. According to the plan, he will put on the Maid Mark armor tomorrow and led his assistant Ethan to break out of the terrorist organization. That's going to be a tough battle. For this reason, just a few minutes ago, when he was about to go to bed, he prayed, hoping that tomorrow's plan would go smoothly. If things don't go well, I hope Pepper and Leon can take care of themselves in the future. But after praying and barely sleeping for a few minutes, these terrorists couldn't wait any longer and came calling. Even that kid in Leon isn't so anxious when he wets his pants. Tony cursed subconsciously, looked around in panic, and shouted, "Ethan! Ethan, are you okay? Those guys are coming. Wait, why did this cave collapse? Oh, Leon, go and see Ethan. Wait a minute, Leon." Tony stared at Leon, who was squatting beside his bed with wide eyes. This kid was only wearing a pair of pants, and gravel fell from his head, but not a single grain of dust fell on him. "Leon, why are you here?" Tony tilted his head back and almost couldn't use an ammunition with the Stark logo printed on them, his expression as dull as water. "No problem," Leon agreed and took the two of them to fly higher. When he was far enough away, he shot out heat rays from his eyes, instantly detonating the entire base's gunpowder. Boom! Box after box of ammunition in the base exploded. All the explosions were intertwined, creating a chain reaction. Fire covered the entire area, a mushroom cloud more than 10 meters high suddenly rose, and gunpowder smoke quickly filled the air. This relatively small terrorist organization base has become a thing of the past. "It's so scary, it's all over," Ethan muttered in a low voice as his cheeks were burned by the high temperature of the explosion. "It's over. This bad memory of yours has finally come to an end." Leon nodded. "Next, I'll take you to the military base in Afghanistan. There is Tony's old friend there, and he will send you to the United States." Leon turned around and flew out of the base, "But I won't be with you. After all, my strength is not suitable for the time being to be linked to my identity." Ethan seemed to have other ideas, but looking at the ground a few hundred meters below, he wholeheartedly chose to obey the arrangement. When Tony heard this, his expression that had been dull since he got out of trouble suddenly changed. He hesitated and said, "You said it's not suitable for the time being. In other words, are you planning to do something in the future, Leon?" "Yes," Leon admitted, "there are some things I have wanted to do a long time ago, but I didn't take action because I lacked the strength." His tone was calm. "After I go back, I can show my strength to all parties while dealing with these things. This way, even if my true identity is discovered in the future, those annoying flies won't attack me easily. We will talk about the specific matter after we get back. Superman is so powerful and yet Lex Luthor is constantly jumping up and down looking for trouble. Not to mention a young man like him who has only been exposed to the sun for half a year. Leon has no doubt that once his physique and strength are exposed, covetous attention from all parties will immediately follow. Unless he shows his invincible strength in advance and his attitude that he will never show mercy. Otherwise, there will be constant trouble. There is no doubt that most people in the world are fearful of power and unethical. What, do you want to persuade me not to make too much noise? Leon asked. No, Tony denied immediately, He paused for a long time, then took a long breath and spoke awkwardly. Leon, I want to say. I'm sorry that I didn't listen to your suggestion and shut down Stark's weapons department before. Tony's face showed deep guilt. This guilt is not for Leon, but for the ordinary people who were harmed by the arms sold by Stark. More than a year ago, when Stark Group's electronic product business spread all over the world, Leon has proposed cutting up and shutting down the arms business. But Tony didn't take it seriously at the time. He just felt that Leon had just grown up and had never seen the world, which was too sad, so he brushed it off with a few words. Thinking about it now, Tony only feels extremely remorseful and guilty. There's no need to apologize. Leon was a little surprised, but not too surprised. He knew Tony would shut down the weapons department, but he didn't expect Tony to apologize. God knows if Tony has made more than 10 serious apologies in his life. In the past, even if this guy made a mistake, he would only make up for it in other places. How could he admit his mistake? It seems that Tony did grow a lot during the time he was kidnapped. The past cannot be undone. As the saying goes, it is not too late to mend the cracks after a sheep is lost. You can make up for your mistakes in the future, Tony. Leon comforted in a gentle voice. And the small arc generator you developed this time, can't it be popularized as a basic energy source and benefit the world? I believe that the whole world will change and become better because of you in the future, so you should feel guilty when you should, but you can't stay guilty. Tony listened quietly to Leon's words. It was rare that he didn't interrupt other people's long speeches. After Leon finished speaking, Tony smiled. Maybe you were right. Well, there is also the matter of Obi. There is definitely something wrong with Obadiah. Leon interrupted directly. You will still hesitate even if I tell you now, so I will wait for you in Los Angeles, and then we will go directly to him to figure things out. Tony subconsciously wanted to give some more advice. After all, he still had some hope for his uncle. But he opened his mouth, but in the end he didn't say anything. Instead, he nodded angrily. I'll listen to you. Hearing this, Leon couldn't help but raise the corners of his mouth. It seems that this experience has improved his voice with Tony. It is said that if you teach others, you will not be able to teach, you will learn things once you learn. This is indeed the case. After flying for a while, Leon landed in the desert with the two of them. Okay, I will send you here. There is an army base 8 kilometers ahead. Here, this is a flare gun. After I leave, if you shoot in the sky, someone will come looking for you. Leon gave Tony the flare gun that he had received from the terrorist base, and then took off to leave. Wait a minute, Tony shouted again hurriedly. I forgot to mention, you remember to go back and take my armor home, and if the blueprints haven't been burned, take them back too. Mom, fake, why didn't you tell me in advance when we were in the cave? I don't think you can hold anything more with both hands, so I'm talking now. Tony, I have it for you. Leon gestured his middle finger backward, soared into the sky, and broke through the sound barrier in the air to leave. The two people who stayed on the ground blinked, watching Leon leaving a trail of clouds as he left, and shrugged at each other. Will your brother not be discovered flying like this next to the military station? Ethan asked. Tony raised his eyebrows. What, my brother? Didn't a guy who called himself Superman rescue us just now and then leave? We didn't even see his face clearly. Ethan suddenly realized. So this is how we should have escaped. That Superman is really a warm-hearted and good man. Boom. Tony fired into the air. The flare traced an arc trajectory, flew into the air more than 20 meters high, and then slowly fell. The red illumination light was particularly conspicuous in the desert at night, bright enough to clearly illuminate the faces of the two people on the ground. Okay, just wait a few minutes and someone will pick us up. Tony threw down the flare gun. If a signal flare appears near the garrison base, the United States will definitely use satellites to check it. When the time comes, it will find him here and send a rescue team immediately. Tony looked at Ethan. Come to the United States with me, Ethan, and take your family with you. He could see that Ethan had been hesitant to speak since just now. Ethan's eyes were a little complicated. My family members are all dead. In fact, Tony, I would rather go back to Iran and do my best to help more people in need. The words Tony had just thought about suddenly got stuck in his throat, and he realized that the savior in front of him had a more tragic past. But then he would have to take Ethan to the United States. Ethan, he said apologetically and heavily, I don't know about your family, I'm sorry. Ethan shook his head and said not to mind. Tony continued, I can understand your desire to return home. He could see that Ethan returned to his hometown with an obvious desire to die, and actually wanted to do something, sacrificing his life. He paused, but what Leon said before is right. I go back this time to help more people. The contribution I can make to the world. It shouldn't just be something that explodes. He tapped the arc reactor on his chest with his fingertips, his eyes burning. Ethan, you can come and join me, we can better help people injured by violence and then make the world change for the better. Quote. Ethan looked at the arc reactor blankly. It was indeed a technology that could change the world. He hesitated a little. Boom. Suddenly the roar of the engine came from the distance, and the sound became louder and louder. A patrol plane moves from far to near. Half a minute after the flare was sent out, the rescue plane arrived. Ethan couldn't help but marvel, they are so efficient. Then he watched helplessly as the plane passed overhead and flew into the distance. Quote. It doesn't seem to be a rescue team. It looks like a light patrol plane. I guess it was chasing Leon. He was discovered by the base. Tony stared at the fighter plane flying away, but the speed doesn't even reach the speed of sound, so they can't catch up with Leon. Wait a minute, Leon's appearance was too flashy, and those people's attention was attracted to him. But next time I put on the MK armor, I will definitely attract the attention of those rednecks in the military. Tony walked a few steps in place. Of course, there is yours too. You will also have to have your own suit of armor by then. When the time comes, we can have a team called MK Team. It doesn't seem possible, call it. 3 minutes passed as Tony chattered endlessly, and another dense sound of engines came faintly from the sky. It was a formation of 3 helicopters. Oh, look, our rescue team is coming. The 2 people, who were thirsty after staying in the desert, jumped on the ground and waved. The other side. As Tony said, Leon was not overtaken by the patrol plane. After all, in half a minute, this distance is enough for him to fly back and forth several times. When the patrol plane caught up halfway, he had already flown out of Afghanistan with the mark armor and drawings. However, unexpectedly, when entering California, Leon was intercepted by another group of fighter planes. After finding Tony's treasure from the collapsed cave, he carried the armor over Afghanistan and flew to the outer thermosphere of the atmosphere. Then accelerate to Mach 30. It only took 20 minutes to cross half of the world and return to North America. He lowered his altitude over the west coast of the Pacific, slowed down to low supersonic speeds, and flew into California. The Stark family's mansion is on the west coast of Los Angeles, California. He only needs to cross the coast mountains in California to reach it. But because his speed dropped too much but not enough, he was photographed by a satellite above him as soon as he entered the country. On the surveillance screen at the U.S. military base, a figure moving at nearly twice the speed of sound over the mountains caught the operator's attention. After zooming in and observing, they were surprised to find that it was a small flying unit. Although the opponent's image is unclear for some reason, covered by a biological force field. But it looks like a flying humanoid object. The soldiers immediately reported the situation to their superiors. What is that? Connect the other party's communication and let them land for inspection. Whether it is the CIA or the Navy, let this good thing fall down for us to see first. The commander looked serious. Sir, there is no response from the other party's radio. Sir, the CIA and the Navy have just contacted us, asking if the flying object belongs to us and requesting the submission of intelligence. We have this good thing that is small, nearly twice the speed of sound, and has a long battery life. Not yet, sir. Shit. Go to the Weapons Research Department and ask Colonel Rhodes to come over. Colonel Rhodes is in Afghanistan looking for Tonistar, sir. Then give me the database comparison. Radar lock. Satellite lock. Give me the clearest satellite picture. Report, sir. There are no similar records in the database comparison. The target cross-section is too small and the radar cannot lock it. The satellite image is blurred due to unknown interference. What should we do, sir? WTF. Who can tell me what is this thing that appears out of thin air and is flying over our heads? I don't know, sir. Are there any high-altitude surveillance units in the West Coast mountain range? Send them out and shoot this thing down. Yes, sir. Leon was flying to Los Angeles silently out of boredom. Suddenly his ears twitched and he turned sideways and looked up. He heard the roar of 4 engines veering off course and approaching him. Am I seen by the satellite? Leon guessed, lowering his speed to check the situation. It's probably because I wasn't fast enough, so I was noticed. It's really troublesome. Flying below the speed of sound is too slow, and low supersonic speeds can easily cause satellites to detect abnormalities and lock on immediately. Maybe next time I'll have to consider flying above Mach 10. Then there was another voice in his ear. Target locked. A pilot shouted over the radio. Missile launchers are ready, waiting for final instructions. The commander at the U.S. military base ordered, aim. Shoot. Shoot down that flying object for me. Global Hawk received. Early warning command number received. The 4 planes dived from high altitude. Although it was still difficult to close the distance with Leon, it was enough to hit the target with airborne missiles. Emission. Missiles were fired one after another, and their speed climbed to above Mach 5 within a few seconds, chasing Leon directly. Leon turned back and looked through the clouds to see the missiles spraying flames thousands of meters away. That is a powerful weapon capable of destroying any air vehicle. But for him now, he can't even scratch his itch. So Leon suddenly had the urge to stop and catch the missile, and then walk out of the firelight spotlessly, shocking the attention of everyone in the U.S. military. As the saying goes, having a body of steel and not showing off is like walking at night in brocade clothes. Pretending is a deep desire engraved in human genes. Abraham Maslow once listed the need to show off as the 4th level of the 5 major human needs hierarchy. When people have enough to eat and drink, there is no threat to their life safety, and they have a certain amount of social interaction, they will naturally want to show off. Leon cannot escape this worldly desire. But he thought about it. In the next period of time, when Tony comes back, he will definitely create a new armor and show it off. There is a scene in the movie where Tony is bombed by US fighter planes after showing off his failure. Therefore, he should not pretend to be this now. It would be better to wait until Tony is full of ambition but is slapped in the face by the US military, and then appear again, which will be a pleasure. After all, only by showing off in front of good brothers can you gain the highest level of psychological satisfaction. Thinking of the look on Tony's face at that time, Leon couldn't help but grin. Now that he has superhuman abilities, he doesn't want to be a member of the motherland and say I don't eat beef. He just wants to continue to increase his strength, and then do something that makes him happy in the process of increasing his strength. For example, pretending to be as cool as Tony wants to but can't in front of Tony. Think of this. Leon raised his head and glanced at the incoming missile above the deep clouds. With a thought, his speed instantly reached Mach 20 and disappeared into the lock of the US military satellite. What the hell? The target has disappeared, the pilot said in horror. Report. The missile did not hit the target. Target lost. Repeat. Target lost. Suspected to have invisibility function. In the US military base, the commander's eyes were stunned. What? Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. Continue to search the entire area. You must find the other party for me. There was a commotion in the command room. It is foreseeable that for some time in the future, the entire Ministry of National Defense will be suspicious and anxious. Welcome back, Master Leon, long time no see. As soon as Leon returned home, Jarvis's voice rang immediately. Jarvis is an artificial intelligence created by Tony, named after Edwin Jarvis, the old butler of the Stark family. It's been half a year, Jarvis. Leon walked to his bedroom. When entering space half a year ago. Because considering that he will spend most of his time sleeping, and the spacecraft was built in a hurry. Therefore, there is no subroutine for Jarvis in the manned spacecraft. Now that he heard Jarvis's voice again, Leon suddenly felt a sense of relief that he had returned home. Jarvis, I have good news. I have rescued Tony from a terrorist organization. Is Pepper in the company at this time? Please tell her so she doesn't have to worry anymore. Leon ordered Jarvis in his room, took off his pants at the same time, and entered the shower room. He hadn't bathed in water for half a year, and the cleaning process on the spacecraft was really difficult to describe. Master Leone, Miss Pepper received the news that the young master was rescued 10 minutes ago and is now waiting at the airport. Jarvis answered. So fast. I didn't expect the operation efficiency of that garrison base to be quite high. Leon muttered. Pepper, as long as she knows, she must have been worried for the past few months. It's also my fault that Tony is so careless. I've reminded him so many times, but he doesn't take it seriously every time. Now that's good. If you calculate the time, I should have just gone to space with my front foot, and he will have gone to Afghanistan with his back foot to deliver food. I told you that Obadiah is eyeing him, but he still doesn't believe it. But Obadiah is really powerful. He can seize the best opportunity to strike. As soon as Tony and I were separated, he decisively struck. Jarvis listened quietly to Leon's complaints. Leon did not say these reproachful words in front of Tony. After all, Tony has already suffered enough because of his arrogance this time, and there is no need for him to add a few more criticisms to add fuel to the fire. People who have just escaped from danger need the jokes of their family members to dispel the psychological shadow. Master Leone, you just said that Obadiah planned the attack on Mr. Stark. Jarvis suddenly interjected. Do you need me to convey the message to Mr. Stark for you and remind him to pay attention? No, I've already told him. When he comes back, we will solve Obadiah's problem. Leon put foam on his hair. Also, Jarvis, why do you always call Tony young master or Mr. Stark? Shouldn't young master be me, and I am also Stark. Tony is so old, so he is called Mr. Stark. The young master is pretty much the same. Sorry, Master Leone, I was serving Mr. Stark before the 90s. Before you came to this family, I used to call Mr. Stark young master. I can change the title next time if you wish. That's not necessary, just call me like you are now. Leon began to rinse the foam. He felt that Jarvis had probably developed human emotions, otherwise how could there be such a thing as habit? Perhaps he can help Jarvis evolve into a truly intelligent life in the future. Rather than being killed by Tony's son, Ultron like in the movie. Leon quickly finished rinsing and put on a set of slim-fitting gray clothes. He wiped his hair with a towel and walked out of the room. Jarvis, prepare some food for me. I feel a little hungry. Leon walked to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator door, but it was empty. Aha, that's as expected. Jarvis, please order takeout for me. It was already morning in Los Angeles. The whole city had just woken up from its sleep and started running for the whole day. Leon's takeout was quickly delivered to the mansion. He couldn't wait to sit down at the table and start eating. After half a year of eating bread and nutrient solution in the universe, his mouth was so pale that he could give birth to a bird. Tasting the delicious taste of fat and carbohydrates again, he couldn't help but eat for 2 hours. Jarvis, order me a cheeseburger takeout. No, order 10. Jarvis, order 10 pizzas, 1 of each flavor. Wait, 3 of the cheese flavors with the highest calories. Jarvis, order 5 steak Wellingtons. The meal lasted until noon. After having enough wine and food, Leon patted his belly with no bulge and sat on the sofa in the hall with satisfaction. Satisfied, so satisfied. No wonder Tony likes cheeseburgers. Eating food with explosive calories makes people feel full of happiness. Leon was filled with emotion. He suddenly felt that for him, perhaps one of the biggest benefits of the Man of Steel was that he could eat no matter how much he ate without getting fat. No matter how much calories and fat he takes into his body, it can only be turned into nutrients to make his body stronger. This is simply good news for him, a Chinese soul who loves food. Taking a bite of the last cheeseburger, Leon felt that he was so satisfied at this moment that he seemed to be able to understand the solemn and sacred artistic conception in Pietà. Jarvis, let me see the unanswered communications in the past 6 months. Leon said. Okay, Master Leone. A series of information windows popped up on Hirosaka in front of Leon. Jarvis summarized it very logically. There are currently a total of 1,634 unread messages on your WeChat and 807 emails in your mailbox. 74% of the messages are from your high school classmates, 89% are from girls, and 93% are romantically inclined. Leon was speechless. These people are really blinded by money. Do men send me messages like that? Okay, ignore emails from unfamiliar people. Okay, Master Leon, you currently have no unread messages. Leon clapped his hands. Perfect. Jarvis, now tell me about the company's development in the past 6 months. By the way, it is a company under my name. 2 years ago when Tony developed the smartphone, Leon also used the resources at hand to establish an internet company, Stark Networks. Anyway, at the beginning of the 21st century, the internet field in the United States was also in its ascendant. Moreover, it has just been a few years since the internet bubble ended, and this field has not yet been occupied by other larger capitals. Since there are large pieces of cake that have not been discovered, they are just there waiting to be divided. Then why can't he be the one eating the cake? There are resources from Stark Group. Leon has brought many internet applications that will only be available in the next 20 years to the market within 1 year. He founded WeChat, Twitter, acquired Amazon and YouTube. He even didn't let go of P-Station, and he made it and registered the company before the Canadian group. Today, Stark Network has more than 200 million users worldwide. Leon slept in space for half a year, but the company's market value quietly doubled. It's just that his disappearance and Tony's disappearance some time ago caused the rising stocks to plummet by nearly half. After listening to Jarvis's report, Leon sighed. Although the stock price fell by half within a month, how come it is still higher than when I left? This is really a nice surprise. The current president of the company is Lau Chow. Tell him that he has done a good job and give him 3 days off to rest. Okay, Master Leon, I will send a notice to Mr. George Bush right now. Jarvis responded and suggested, but I think that rather than taking a vacation, Mr. Bush may hope that you can agree to him adding an external home button function to his smartphone. Leon was speechless. Oh my God, he still misses that useless function like adding feet to a snake. Tony has already developed the mobile phone into an ultra-thin full touch screen. The next step is to project mobile phones and screen projection glasses. Why is Lau Chow still immersed in his retro obsession? Jarvis, tell him to bury his obsession in the ground quickly and take a good rest for a few days. Stop being as old-fashioned as Aunt Susan next door. Okay, Master Leon, Jarvis responded, but there doesn't seem to be a lady named Susan next door to us. That's a metaphor, Jarvis, a figure of speech. Leon emphasized. I know. Jarvis's voice paused for a moment, and there was a slight electric sound, as if he was taking notes. Leon took Hirasaka. By the way, Jarvis, Tony should be back in Los Angeles at 4 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. There is still such a long time, so play Superman for me. Okay, now play the 1979 movie, Superman. It turns out that like Mrs. Susan, you also like to watch nostalgic movies. Jarvis learned and used it flexibly. Who is Susan? Oh, you learn so fast. Leon's mouth twitched. The time comes in the afternoon. After Tony returned to Los Angeles. First, he looked at each other affectionately with Pepper. Then I immediately went to buy 2 cheeseburgers. Afterwards, he returned and went to Stark Industries to hold a press conference. After Leon's repeated emphasis, Tony has developed deep suspicions about Obadiah. So when Obadiah showed up, he hugged him warmly and politely asked him for a burger to eat. Tony chose to refuse decisively. Sorry, I only have this burger on hand and can't share it with you, Tony said as he took out another burger from his pocket. Leon was watching the live broadcast on TV at home. KNKV TV station broadcasts live footage simultaneously on the internet and TV. Tony Stark was rescued from Afghanistan, which was a big event that shocked the entire Los Angeles. As soon as the news appeared, it became a global trending topic on Twitter, attracting tens of millions of people to watch in the live broadcast room. At the same time, Stark Group's share price has been rising. How it fell off a cliff before, now it is taking off and climbing. Just because Tony Stark is back alive. It's as if his name alone is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. All investors are excited. This is simply a time to enter the market with a sure profit and no loss. Until in the live broadcast room, Tony squatted in front of the podium and said a lot of things about meat eaters. Then he stood up, walked behind the podium, and spoke with great solemnity. I declare that from now on, the Stark Group's weapons department will be permanently closed. Tony was extremely serious. I want to seriously think about the future of this company. Let this group create greater benefits for the world. Boom. Everyone present and all netizens in the live broadcast room were shocked at this moment. The scene was noisy and full of excitement. Every reporter was trying to put the microphone to Tony's mouth and asked what stimulated him to make such a decision. There are all kinds of vocabulary in the live broadcast room. Some are in disbelief, and some laugh at the fact that even capitalists will find out in their conscience. But more often than not, investors who have just bought stocks are scolding people on the screen. Tony is really decisive. There is no buffer at all. Now the market value of the subsidiary will fall again. Leon lay on the sofa and raised the milk in his hand to Tony on the TV, but this is his style. Master Leon, you seem to have known that Tony would do this. Jarvis asked. Of course, this is something I wanted him to do 2 years ago. Leon turned over and sat up, picked up a piece of fruit on the table and stuffed it into his mouth. He will be back soon, I have to prepare. By the way, has Mark's armor been cleared out? You can give Tony a surprise, Jarvis. Leon opened the door and walked down the stairs. Jarvis responded. As per your arrangement, the armor has been repaired on the robotic arm console. You can take Mr. Stark there when he comes back. In the evening, the underground laboratory of Stark Mansion. Tony kept rubbing his chin with his palm, staring back and forth at his Mark armor. He has been in this state for a long time. Next to him, Leon struggled to hold back his laughter. So, why did you dye her pink? Tony finally said, pointing at Mark's armor that turned into a girly pink color with an expressionless expression. This. Leon stopped smiling instantly and put his hands behind his back in a serious manner. This is a surprise carefully prepared by Jarvis for you. He took a step forward and pointed to the location on the armor's chest where the energy core was placed. There is a small circle of vague English engraved on it. Leon read it out. Tony has a pink heart. He winked at Tony and said, how are you? Are you very touched? Pink represents innocence and kindness. Jarvis is complimenting you. Humph, thank you for clarifying my doubts, otherwise I really wouldn't have thought of it. Tony pursed his lips and sneered. His face turned dark, and he couldn't believe how beautiful it would be when he put on this suit of armor again. I'm afraid that before he can take action, the enemy will laugh to death when they see the English circle on his chest, even saving ammunition. Tony took a deep breath. Some words were stuck in his chest and he couldn't say them out, which made his face turn slightly red. Leon almost couldn't help laughing when he saw Tony's wonderful change in expression. Finally Tony turned his head and stopped looking at his precious armor. Jarvis, why did you dye her pink? Tony asked the other principal. He really liked his first set of armor and even called it, her. Sir, this is Master Leon's suggestion. He said that you will be happier when you see the armor that has been repaired and dyed pink. Jarvis seemed to be explaining, but in fact he was complaining secretly. Oh, wait, Jarvis, you didn't object at the time, we all thought so, didn't we? Leon pulled Jarvis into the water. Master Leon, please forgive me for my offense. You know that artificial intelligence does not have its own thoughts. Artificially retarded people have no thoughts. Jarvis, you will remind Tony when he asks out the cover girl that Pepper will be angry. Now it is normal to want to prepare a surprise for Tony. Tony's face became even more ugly. That's enough, he shouted, and glanced helplessly at Leon, who was already laughing. Don't think that I don't know that you are taking revenge. Leon did not refute. So you also know that it is wrong for me to make a special trip back to the cave to carry the armor back for you. Tony spread his hands. Okay, I admit defeat, let's end this matter. I'm not angry, and you don't want to torture me anymore because of that little thing. Tony has been tortured by Leon for more than 10 years. He has become accustomed to the self-emotional regulation required as a guardian when facing naughty children. Of course, this naughtiness is just what Tony thinks. In the eyes of others, Leon is very nice. For example, when he was a child, Leon always brought home new cover girls because he hated Tony. Several times, when Tony was about to raise his gun and mount his horse, he played the love words Tony had said to other girls at the loudest volume outside the door. Then the girl who was hugging Tony became angry and slammed the door. He emerged from the corner again and waved his little hand and said, "Good night, sweet dreams tonight, Tony." So Tony got angry on the spot and chased Leon all over the room with a pillow in his hand. After Pepper heard Tony's complaints the next day, he was so happy that he gave Leon a lot of pocket money. However, Leon only continued to do this for half a month. Because half a month later, Tony's newly customized soundproof bedroom was completed. Later, even if Leon was dancing outside the house, Tony could play Mozart inside the house, creating a quiet atmosphere and spending the night with the beautiful woman. Fight, like this. The two started when Leon was 3 years old and continued until he started asking girls home after he entered high school. The night when Leon took the girl home for the first time, the older one and the younger one looked at each other and smiled knowingly. So the two brothers reached a reconciliation. However, the fighting, in other aspects, has not stopped. Sometimes Tony causes trouble for Leon, and sometimes Leon takes the lead. Pepper's comment is that these are two kids who won't grow up. Jarvis, put this armor away and repaint it, otherwise I don't want to see her again. Tony waved his hand. By the way, help me purchase a batch of materials. I want to build a new armor. The conditions in the cave are poor, and the armor I made cannot show my strength. Leon, this time I will definitely let you see that my armor is not a toy. Leon shrugged indifferently. It's up to you, I'll just wait and see. At this time, several smart robotic arms from Daidai and Benben in the laboratory came over and worked together to push the pink armor out. Leon even helped out. He asked Jarvis to paint the armor just to tease Tony, but he never thought that Tony would actually be able to wear it. But what he didn't expect was when he visited Tony's uniform collection room 10 years later. This armor with the most bizarre style was displayed at the forefront of Tony's Mark armors. Are you going to start making the armor now? When Leon looked back, Tony just did what he said and cleared the desktop with a slap in the face, ready to start a new round of work. Could it be that you can't wait to prove yourself now? Watch your words, Leon. Tony doesn't need to prove himself, he will only challenge himself. Tony said. Okay, then when you challenge yourself, remember to come up before dinner. Leon walked towards the stairs of the laboratory. To celebrate your safe escape, Pepper plans to hold a family party, and both Ethan and Rod will come. Rhodes is Tony's good friend in the military, and the relationship between the two in the movie is good enough to give him a steel suit. Just a few of us. No problem, as long as I'm not the one cooking, everything is acceptable. Tony replied without raising his head. Since the last time he cooked grilled sea bass, it was all charred, and Leon laughed for a long time, so he vowed never to enter the kitchen again. After Pepper finished cleaning up the mess left by Tony at the press conference, he rushed to the mansion. She hugged Leon gently in the hall excitedly. Leon, oh my gosh, I can't believe Tony said you're back, even though the Mark spaceship is still flying outside the Earth. The spaceship built by Tony was named the Mark spaceship. In the end, you actually flew back by yourself. It's incredible. Wow, my God, your body is so strong now. Compared with half a year ago, you look like two different people. Pepper patted Leon's chest, and the marble-like texture made her cover her mouth and exclaim. If I had known you were so strong, I would have contacted you a few months ago, so Tony wouldn't have to. As she spoke, she felt a little guilty. Leon quickly comforted. It's okay, Pepper, you're also worried that I'm worried, aren't you? If I hadn't become as strong as Superman, even if you told me the news about Tony's disappearance, I would still be alone in the lonely universe. If we say that Tony is both an older brother and half an old man to Leon. Pepper, who had brought him up since childhood, could be called half-sister and half-adoptive mother. As he spoke, Leon blinked. Besides, although the process was a bit tortuous, for Tony, since he survived the catastrophe, it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Is that what you think? But I think he has become a little irrational. Pepper frowned. Maybe you don't quite understand Tony after the experience of almost death. Leon pushed Pepper towards the kitchen. Let's go, Pepper, I have to trouble you to make dinner. I will tell you about Tony's wonderful adventure. A few hours later, the dinner ended successfully with all the guests enjoying themselves. After Tony's introduction, Ethan met Pepper and Rhodes and successfully integrated into this small circle. For a long time in the future, Ethan will work in Stark's R&D department and do what he wants to do. Tony was also at the dinner table, explaining his idea of doing something more beneficial to the world. It's a pity that Rhodes doesn't understand this very well for the time being. As the night got darker, the slightly drunk Rhodes and Ethan were picked up. Only Pepper, Tony, and Leon were left in the mansion. Leon sat on the sofa after eating and drinking, looking out the window at the undulating sea level, thinking long and hard. Tony looked at Pepper, who was clearing away the dishes in the kitchen, and then at Leon, who was in a daze, and he seemed to be trying to hide his words. "Hey, Leon," he finally couldn't help it and called Leon. "Huh, what for?" Leon looked back with a bit of confusion. Tony glanced at Pepper. "Didn't you say you were going to find Obadiah tonight? When will you leave? Also, don't let Pepper know about it for the time being, otherwise she will say it's too dangerous and we'll go and she will resign." No matter how messed up Tony was, Pepper would just keep working with a cold face. But as long as Tony's safety is involved, Pepper's most common threat method to stop Tony is to resign. Even if every threat she makes has no effect, then wait until Pepper leaves. Leon glanced in the direction of Stark Industries and said casually, "Anyway, Obadiah is still in the industrial park. Wait, he is in. Tony, let's go there now." Leon picked up Tony and pushed him out. He did not forget to shout towards the kitchen, "Pepper, Tony and I went for a walk and will be back later." "Huh, okay," Pepper responded. When he went out, Tony asked in a low voice, wait a minute. What did you just see that made you so anxious?" "Obadiah is contacting his friends in Afghanistan." Leon also lowered his voice. "What?" Tony was stunned, and then Leon grabbed his arm and jumped into the sky. The two soon arrived at Stark Industrial Park. At this time, the office building only had a few sporadic lights on. Among them, Obadiah's office is so brightly lit that it looks like a burning torch at night. Leon floats out of Obadiah's office window with Tony. The huge floor-to-ceiling windows allowed them to clearly see every corner inside. At this time in the room, Lee Obadiah was facing the window, sitting at his desk, saying something to the computer screen. He's on a video call with someone from a terrorist organization. Tony's expression was not very good. "Can you hear what he was talking about? It's not a nice thing to say. You can listen to it yourself." Leon put his hand on the gap of the floor-to-ceiling window, and with a slight shake, the glass tilted up at a corner, and he grabbed it and opened it backwards. So the entire floor-to-ceiling window was peeled off silently. Tony's eyes widened in shock again. But the next second a voice came from the office, leaving him no time to care. "Our leader died because of your commission, so you must compensate us before the next cooperation," said the person opposite the computer. Obadiah retorted angrily, "You let Tony go. You actually have the guts to make amends with me. I told your leader that he must be 100% sure that Tony Stark's body is gone. How did he do it? That has nothing to do with us. If you don't pay compensation, we will expose what you did to Tony Stark." The terrorists used their usual methods. Obadiah's eyes became colder and colder, as if he wanted to eat the person across from him alive. "Aren't you afraid that I will no longer provide you with arms and weapons?" "Sorry, now that Tony Stark has shut down the weapons department, I'm afraid you are of no use." Terrorists are emboldened. Threaten again. "Do you accept compensation? If you don't accept it, I believe Tony Stark is also willing to pay for information about the real murderer." Obadiah closed his lips tightly, and the corners of his lips wriggled to hide his anger. A few seconds later, he suddenly laughed, with a smile as bright as spring breeze. "Okay. Of course, I accept your request for compensation, but I have a condition." "Say it." Upon hearing that he could get compensation, the other party immediately became excited. "I will find a way to get Tony to go abroad again. This time, you must kill him for me." Obadiah said about the plan. "I will give you a batch of Stark munitions, which you can use to attract media attention. Tony has just announced the closure of the weapons department. At this time, a large number of weapons produced by Stark appear on the battlefield. He will definitely not be able to sit still." The terrorist continued. "I know, the rest will be left to us. I guarantee that this time the 10 Rings gang will perfectly complete the commission from our friends." Obadiah smiled and turned off the video call. Of course that would be great. With a beep, The video hangs up. Obadiah sat silently on the chair. The smile on his face gradually cooled down, and then gradually became ferocious. His anger began to boil over. Even if he is sitting still, it makes people feel as if he will rush out of his workstation at any time and choose someone to devour. Idiots. A bunch of idiots. Obadiah finally broke out after a moment of silence. He stood up suddenly, swept everything on the table to the ground, ripped off the mouse and smashed it into pieces on the wall. Even a playboy can let him escape, a bunch of losers. He roared, his roar making the windows tremble. Leon glanced at Tony, who was glaring beside him outside the window, and knew that Obadiah's performance was over. He took one step forward and led Tony into the room. He said politely, "Well, how should I put it? I'm sorry to interrupt you." A sudden voice came out from behind, causing Obadiah's roar to stop abruptly. "Who?" "Tony." He instantly broke into a cold sweat and turned around. Standing opposite him were Tony and Leon. Among them, Leon looked unhappy. Tony stared at him with red eyes. Those eyes, which were always beautiful, were filled with disbelief and anger at being betrayed by Juxon. "Tony, and I heard what you just said." Leon pointed to the computer. "Do you have anything else to defend?" Obadiah's face showed panic visible to the naked eye, but he was thoughtful and quickly suppressed his emotions. He raised his hands and trembled at the corner of his mouth. "Oh, Leon, why are you still here so late?" "Well, actually, what just happened was a misunderstanding. Listen to my explanation. There is a reason for all this." Obadiah's mind was spinning rapidly at this moment. He put down one hand nervously and opened the drawer. "This is because there is a force that I cannot resist, threatening my life and asking me kill you all." As Obadiah spoke, he suddenly pulled out a pistol from the drawer, quickly loaded it, and pointed it at Tony and the two. "Raise your hands and stand back." Obadiah, who was as gentle as an elder just a moment ago, turned into a ferocious villain in the blink of an eye. "You better stop now." Tony pursed his lips tightly, raised his hand first, blocked in front of Leon, and backed away. "Huh, Tony, you still want to protect that little one. It's really touching family affection." Obadiah's words made Tony feel even more angry. He said coldly, Obadiah, I originally thought you were one of my most trustworthy people." "Really, Tony, I'm really touched when you say that." Obadiah pointed the gun at Tony. "I also want to play this wonderful family game with you. But since you have discovered it, I don't have to hide it." "Tony, actually you are just one of my chickens that can lay golden eggs. You know, I founded this company with your father, and I have been assisting you for the past 30 years, but I have gotten nothing. Even the outsider behind you can get half of the company, but what about me? Only by killing you, killing both of you, can I get everything I want." As Obadiah spoke, he waved his fist in pain. "Everything should be like this. As long as Tony dies in Afghanistan, Leon will die in outer space. But why do you want to escape, and why do you want to see tonight? Everything of." His eyes were blood red, and he held Tony back with his gun. "You forced me, you pushed me to a dead end, then I will destroy everything, no one can stop me." Tony was staring at his uncle from beginning to end. His cheeks were tense, and his eyes were full of indescribable sorrow and anger. His head was pushed back by the muzzle of the gun, and then he finally closed his eyes. "Let's do it, Leon." He no longer had any expectations. "Listen to you, boss." Leon's voice just fell. Obadiah's neck was tightly grasped by a pair of iron-like hands, lifting him up. "You drink." Ahem. Obadiah's face quickly turned red due to lack of oxygen. His eyeballs bulged and he stared at Leon, unable to understand what happened in that brief moment. Why didn't he blink? Leon appeared in front of Tony behind him and subdued him. He raised his arms with difficulty, trying to make some more struggles. But Leon just glanced at him and threw him out of the window without any care. 3 seconds later, a heavy landing sounded outside the window. "It sounds like Obadiah has been reduced to peanut butter. Why bother?" Leon sighed, walked to the desk, first connected the phone to the data cable, and then plugged it into the computer. Computers at the top of Stark Industries are generally not connected to the internet, so if you want to invade, you can only connect manually. Directly connecting to the external network for video calls like Obadiah did just now is already a serious violation. "Jarvis, hack into this computer, collect evidence of Obadiah's crime, hand it over to the police, and note that he will commit suicide in fear of crime and jump to his death. Okay, Master Leon. After arranging the task for Jarvis, Leon turned around and saw Tony still standing there, just a little slumped. He walked over and patted Tony on the shoulder. It's all over. Go back and have a good sleep. Otherwise, we can meet up with some cover girls this week to relax. Tony's mournful expression stagnated for a few seconds, and he couldn't laugh or cry. You kid. Obadiah Stani, Chief Operating Officer of Stark, fell to his death in Stark Industrial Park 3 days ago. Based on official findings, the death of Obadiah Stane was not caused by others, but committed suicide out of fear of crime. Police announced. Stani has repeatedly conducted arms transactions with foreign terrorist forces in his own name, and committed multiple murders, interference in other countries' internal affairs and other serious crimes, including the attack on Stark Group President Tony Stark a few months ago. It was also attributed to Obadiah Stanislav. For more detailed reports, we are now contacting reporters at the front. Leon was pacing in the hall, watching the news and stuffing a piece of cheese pizza into his mouth. It's great. Now the stock that just went up after I showed up at the company the day before yesterday has to fall again, like a roller coaster. Leon was angry at himself. Although this has no impact on me, I still feel very sorry for the investors who support Stark. He thought for a while, opened Twitter, and posted an update. The Obadiah incident was just an accident, and the Stark Group is inseparable from evil. Please continue to believe in Stark Group and support Stark Group's stocks. You will definitely be able to wait until the day you return with a full load. Stark never disappoints his supporters. With a picture of leftover pizza on the table. So a few seconds later, the comment area under his feed exploded. Hundreds of scolding comments appeared immediately, as if buying a house on Twitter. Look at that Obadiah, such a person can still be the chief operating officer. Stark Group takes jujube pills. It's all bullshit. I bought stocks when Tony Stark came back, and in the blink of an eye he shut down the weapons department and I lost half of my fortune. Leon Stark showed up after half a year and I bought stocks again, but 2 days later it was revealed that the COO was a super criminal. I can already see myself begging on the streets of Los Angeles in a month. Stark, you made me lose everything. Then more comments popped up every second, all of which were disloyal investors crying that they had lost their wits before buying Stark stock. Leon looked at the comments section with 999 plus comments in 1 minute and felt a little ashamed. Well, it seems that Stark's shareholders have their own ideas. Forget it, I believe everyone will have a bright future, be safe and happy. At this time, Pepper came over with coffee. I thought I heard you praying for stock investors just now. Actually, it's not. Leon looked at Pepper's expression and had a bad feeling. But Pepper went on talking alone. To be honest, Leon, if you really want them not to suffer too much, you should go and call up Tony, who has been missing for 3 days now. Then you go back to your chair in your own company and make good money instead of leaving everything to me. Pepper was a little manic when she talked about her work because the burden on her shoulders was so heavy. Tony doesn't know what he's doing. Obadiah has committed so many crimes and deserves death, and you are at home basking in the sun every day. How can I do so much work alone? She complained very fast. Stark Industries, Stark Network, Stark Electronics Technology, even if I have 3 heads, I can't handle so many things. And you, Leon, you still have time to pray for the investors. The more Pepper talked, the angrier he became, and he pushed the coffee in his hand to Leon. Oh my God, now that I'm sifting through it, I realize how crazy I have been these days. Leon, I ask you to tell Tony that if he doesn't come out of that laboratory, I will resign. And you, Leon, my boy, if you don't manage your own internet company, I will also resign. After saying that, Pepper angrily warned Leon with serious eyes, turned around and clicked out the door on her high heels. She had to go to that class again. Leon opened his mouth on the sofa. He wanted to say a few nice words to make Pepper persist. But it seems that it is really too much to leave all the decision-making work of the 3 companies to Pepper. He scratched his head. Maybe I should go back to the company. No, how could I even think about going to work? What I should do is let Lao Chow stop taking vacation and go back to work. Yes, that's it. Leon clapped his hands and asked Jarvis, Jarvis, is Joe Bush still on vacation? You inform him and let him go back to work as soon as possible. Sorry, Master Leon, Jarvis said. In fact, Mr. George Bush's vacation just ended yesterday, and he has returned to the company at 4 o'clock this morning. 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock in the morning. Leon exclaimed, it turns out I misunderstood. Old Chow is really the best CEO in the world. If I have the opportunity in the future, I will definitely establish a World Outstanding CEO Award and award it to Lao Chow every year. You said, since old Joe is already at his post, Pepper shouldn't be angry anymore, right? This question made Jarvis silent for a few seconds. Master Leon, I'm afraid not. Because Mr. George Bush is only in charge of Stark Electronic Technology and handles some of the Stark Network work on his behalf, Miss Pepper is still doing the other work. Leon thought thoughtfully. That's right. This was indeed the arrangement when I left half a year ago, but Tony would also participate in the management of the company at that time. Jarvis, do you have any suggestions? Master Leon, in order to prevent Miss Pepper from resigning, I suggest that you return to work temporarily and wait until you find a successor president before you go home and continue to bask in the sun. Leon immediately shook his head. That won't work. Sunbathing is the most important thing, so we can't delay it. Besides, I've been doing more than just basking in the sun these past few days. You also know what I've been up to. 3 days ago, Leon asked Jarvis to collect all the fighting tutorials on the internet. After these few days of study, he has mastered most of the fighting techniques. Jeet Kune Do, Muay Thai, Krav Maga, Judo, Mixed Martial Arts, Bajikwan. However, the more he learned, the more Leon found that his control over power had become stronger, but his combat effectiveness had hardly increased. This makes fighting skills quite useless. Think about the world we live in now. Anyone he can hit can be killed with just one slap. If you can't beat him, you may not be able to resist even one of the opponent's moves even if you try your best. These fighting techniques can only be used when fighting against evenly matched enemies. But there are very few people who can evenly match him. Odin counts as one, Purple Potato counts as one, Captain Marvel counts as one, and there are really only a handful of them. But your fighting skills have reached their upper limit, and there is no point in continuing to practice. Jarvis suggested again. So why not go back to work, which will not only make Miss Pepper happy, but you can also have a fulfilling day. Jarvis, why do you seem to want me to go to work so much? Leon was stunned for a moment. What did he think of? Ah, I see, you were protesting that I dragged you into the water in front of Tony 3 days ago. Well, Jarvis, you still say that you have no subjective thoughts, but you have obviously begun to have the human emotion of grudge. Jarvis' light ball flashed on the screen. Master Leon, I will not do anything detrimental to you. But you will encourage me to do things that delay my becoming stronger and make me unhappy. Leon spread his hands. He thought for a while. Well, let me go down and call Tony up first, and then go find a president for the company. Then all the worries will be gone. As you wish. Jarvis was still very considerate. When Leon entered the laboratory, he found that except for several arc reactors and a stack of DC comics on Tony's desk, there was nothing special. Even Tony isn't here. Tony, he looked around, where are you? Leon's super hearing does not stay on at all times. Just like Superman in the movies. He has to concentrate and let his brain discard most of the external information in order to live in a quiet world. When he didn't get a response, Leon listened slightly, looking for Tony's movements. It turns out it's in the garage, but why does it sound a bit noisy? When Leon finds Tony in the basement, he looked like he had thick dark circles under his eyes, but he was full of energy. He wears mechanical shoes with exposed wires on his feet, holds the controller in both hands, and is directing the little assistants. Ben, you continue to take the video. Dadai, go over there. Yes, it's right there. You were responsible for putting out the fire. Then Tony stood in the center of his improvised experimental platform and took a few deep breaths. Okay, let's give it a try. First activate 10% of the thrust and prepare to take off. Phew. Tony shook his shoulders and took a deep breath to adjust. Come on, 3, 2, 1. He pressed the control device in his hand, and a powerful jet of flame suddenly shot out from the iron shoes under his feet. Laugh. The ferocious thrust sent Tony flying into the air. Then it hit the ceiling hard with a thud. Obviously the impact was not light. Oh! Tony shouted in pain and fell to the ground. The intelligent robotic arm on the side determined that the situation complied with the instructions and immediately released fire spray. Oh, that must be painful. Leon looked at Tony, who was covered in white spray, and sighed with his head back. Leon. Tony turned his head when he heard the voice, his cheeks squeezed together in pain, and he twisted his shoulders on the ground. Come and give me a hand, I'm afraid my ribs are going to be broken. Here we go. Maybe you'd better ask Dadai to prepare a crash pad for you next time. Leon stepped forward and lifted Tony to the chair. He glanced up and down. Very good, it's just a skin injury. You can still continue to do the extreme sports you just did. That's not an extreme sport. Tony rolled his eyes. That's me making the Mark II suit. You mean your second suit of armor is this pair of shoes? Do you want others to shoot at your shoes? Don't be kidding. These shoes are not Captain America's shield. Leon joked. Of course not. I am currently experimenting with the propulsion system. Once this link is completed, the subsequent efficiency will be greatly improved. Tony immediately retorted, not forgetting to ridicule. Of course, ordinary people with average grades like you basically can't understand the logic here. Now it was Leon's turn to roll his eyes. I got admitted to Columbia University no matter what. Do you have some misunderstandings about ordinary people? Oh, really? There's nothing you can do about it. When I was your age, I had already graduated from MIT for many years and had 3 doctorates from Cambridge. I really couldn't understand the feelings of ordinary people. Tony waved his hands in a disgusting manner, but it should be the same. When you get to Columbia in the future, you will find that your teachers can't understand my armor either. I'm sorry. My university major is business, and my teacher probably understands the economic benefits of your armor. When Leon didn't have the ability to awaken before, he could only develop in the direction of managing a company. Naturally, he applied for a business major in college. But it's different now. He knocked on Tony's iron shoe, and the past was before, and the present is now. Don't forget what kind of ability I awakened. Ability? What ability? Isn't it just about getting stronger in the sun? Tony wondered. It's Superman's ability. Leon emphasized. I have everything Superman has. So, are you going to come and confess to me now that you are actually a Kryptonian? Yesterday, your Kryptonian father who became a super artificial intelligence came to your door and asked you to put on red pants and save the world. Tony said with an exaggerated expression. Or are your cousins from Krypton receiving the signal from the spacecraft and coming to capture you tomorrow, so they come to me now for help? Leon was speechless. Tony, when did you have so many naive assumptions? Of course I am from Earth. You took me for so many physical examinations when I was a child and you still don't know. Leon is undoubtedly from Earth. 19 years ago. He traveled to this world and became a baby. By chance, he was adopted by the Starks. Although I have no memory of before I was 1 year old, I don't know if I have biological parents in this life. But his appearance is not much different from his previous life, and his blood tests have never had any accidents since he was a child. It all shows that he is a native of Earth. Also, you have read too many DC comics recently. There is no DC darkness in our world. Leon complained. Then what do you want to explain? Tony tilted his head. I mean, Superman also has a power called a super brain, and so do I. A super brain will allow him to make more achievements in engineering and even reach the top very easily. Leon pointed at the iron shoes. So now I can completely understand your research, and even surpass you. Beyond me. Tony raised his chin directly. Leon, this year's April Fool's Day has passed. You can save this cold joke until next year. He blinked. And I don't remember Superman having this ability. If he had a super brain, in the comics, would he always be able to rush forward and shake his fist whenever he encounters an enemy? Leon smacked his lips. Maybe, his super brain told him that when facing difficulties, he must first learn to trust his superpower. Isn't that just a fool's brain? Tony concluded, so you still can't understand my armor. Leon didn't want to argue anymore. Stop it. The pointless argument ends here. People like you who only read half of the comics are the most annoying. Then you can finish the Superman comics for me and then refute me. Don't wait for Tony to bite his tongue. He said directly. With your mortal wisdom, since you say that I can't understand your armor, do you dare to let me learn from you on the side? Leon raised a finger. It only takes 1 day, and your knowledge will become my knowledge. And in 3 days, I will build a better armor than you. What did you say? Tony wasn't sleepy now. What he can't bear the most is other people's provocation in his professional field. Especially when the provocation comes from his stupid brother. This is the funniest joke I've heard in 2008. As if the pain in his chest disappeared for a moment, Tony jumped out of bed and looked directly into Leon's eyes. I accept your challenge. He issued a declaration of victory. Mortal wisdom. I will return this title to you in 3 days. Follow me. He waved his hand, returned to the experimental site, and began to command the intelligent robotic arm. Dudu, you go and clean up the scene. Ben, go get the materials. Others, wait for me to design a new spray structure. Leon squinted his eyes and looked at the arrogant Tony in front of him, and the desire to win in his heart also burned. Jarvis, send all the knowledge about exoskeleton mecha to my Stark pad. I will understand Tony's design within half an hour. Okay, Master Leon. Jarvis agreed first. Then it asked, but, Master Leon, do you still remember your purpose of finding Tony and Ms. Pepper's previous request? Pepper, what's wrong with Pepper? Leave it alone for now. Leon twisted his arm. I'm going to let Tony know what a super brain is today. Tony was full of fighting spirit and began to conceive the design drawings, while not forgetting to observe Leon on the side. He quietly paid attention and found that what Leon was learning was actually the most basic mechanical structure. So he couldn't help but smile in advance as if he had a winning chance. It's different when you have the motivation to compete. In just the past half hour, Tony has perfected the propulsion system that has been his most troublesome thing in the past 2 days. It can be said to be an explosion of inspiration. Leon has already finished learning about exoskeletons and has begun to learn circuit construction. Tony paid a little attention and smiled proudly again. He thought that Leon was giving up because he couldn't learn the knowledge of exoskeletons, so he changed his direction. Have you found it difficult to learn the knowledge of war armor? It doesn't matter, let's start with the simple ones. Tony spoke like he was opening champagne. Don't embarrass yourself. If everyone in this world can simply learn knowledge, then what's the use of being a genius? He waved his hand and started modifying the equipment shoes again. Don't worry, when I make the most outstanding armor, I can still consider letting you experience it. At this time, Tony seemed to have forgotten the fact that Leon could fly. He was completely immersed in the pleasure of defeating his stupid brother 3 days later. With the help of Dai, he even hummed the song, Jingle Bells, while modifying the injector. Leon ignored Tony, who opened the champagne at halftime. Sitting alone, he quickly studied the textbooks and comprehensive papers prepared for him by Jarvis. If Tony walks behind Leon at this time, look at the display screen in front of him. I will definitely give myself a slap in the face immediately for being so complacent just now. Because on that screen, lines of text and charts were jumping at a speed that was so fast that it was blurry. But Leon's eyes always stayed on the first line of text and chart that appeared every time. The speed of switching text on the display is actually not as fast as Leon's reading and understanding speed. It only takes 30 seconds for Leon to finish studying a college-level textbook. In just half an hour, he can become a comprehensive theoretical expert in a branch of the field. If there is a system that can rate the knowledge an individual possesses. At this time, you can even see that upgrade icons are popping up one after another on Leon's head. Level point 1. Level point 2, level point 3, level point 4. In that way, Tony can predict in advance that his brother has become a cheating player. Unfortunately, there is no if. When 3 hours have passed, Leon felt that he had a sufficient knowledge base and finally stood up. Tony was conducting his 13th propulsion device experiment. Now Tony can float in the air relatively stably. He was trying his best to control his balance and glanced at Leon. Look who is here. Could it be that our little Leon finally knows the difficulty of learning and is coming to admit defeat and beg for mercy from his brother Tony? Leon showed an enigmatic smile and stretched out his hand to adjust the non-existent glasses on the bridge of his nose. No, I have learned the necessary knowledge and am now ready to join your research. Tony was stunned for a moment, and then said with some humor, "That's just right. Although you can't help me much, you can still carry heavy equipment." He slowly descended from the air, and after landing, he staggered for a moment before standing still. "Follow me, the propulsion system has been basically completed, and now we can start manufacturing the rest of the armor." Tony had already determined that he was sure of victory, so he began to devote himself wholeheartedly to the creation of the armor. He arranged follow-up work in an orderly manner. "Leon, go get the titanium alloy material and gold, and hold the magnifying glass steady." The two soon began working together to build the armor. Tony was basically directing the whole process. Leon asked a few questions from time to time. Tony, who had entered a state of concentration, didn't feel anything was wrong. He explained everything while doing it, and he could tell everything he knew. It seems that although he thinks his brother is stupid, he still hopes that he can learn more of his skills. "There, the location is wrong. You have to go around and start from here, otherwise there will be a short circuit." "Aha, you must be kidding. How can such a large load be equipped with deformation equipment?" "Great, the flight stabilizer can be installed here. Leon, your strength is really a good tool for assembling and building equipment. I dare say that the hydraulic press is not as easy to use as you. I should have asked you to come down and help me a few days ago." For a day and a whole night, the two of them were building battle armor. Because of Leon's participation, the assembly and manufacturing of parts can be said to be both precise and efficient. For example, if Tony needed an IT-level precision part temporarily, he had to wait for it to be delivered from the factory. But on this night, as long as Leon waved his fist, he could get a component that was better than IT grade. Very good. Tony's dark circles have turned into dark bags, but his big eyes are still bright. The armor originally took a month or even months to build and fine-tune. Actually, with the help of Leon, 80% was completed overnight. Tony's current state of mind was extremely high. All it takes is one more final step, and he can put on his new armor and soar into the sky. He habitually commanded, "Leon, you go and build a current loop. Next, we only need to connect to Jarvis's system and conduct assembly experiments to complete the final steps." However, what he waited for was another answer. "No, Tony, I'm leaving." Leon refused. "What are you talking about? Why are you leaving?" Tony's eyes widened. Leon spread his hands. "Have you forgotten? I said that I would build a better armor than Mark within 3 days. And now that I have learned all your skills, of course I won't stay here. It just so happens that the final step of building your armor won't be too troublesome. You can handle it by yourself. So I'm leaving. See you in 3 days, Tony." Leon waved. "I'm going to your laboratory. If you need anything, just come up to me." "What?" Tony's mind was full of questions. "You really want to build your own armor? Are you kidding me? You're just an ordinary person." "Wait a minute." Tony suddenly remembered. This past night, in the process of assisting him, the questions raised by Leon gradually became more in-depth and even started to inspire him. The same is true for the hands-on part. It was unfamiliar at first, but then it became easy for me. In other words, Leon really learned those professional knowledge. Tony was shocked by his sudden awakening of memories. He was so immersed in work last night and so focused that he didn't notice it yet. Thinking about it now, Leon obviously grew from a mechanical novice to a mechanical expert overnight. He is still an expert who is not necessarily weaker than him. Your learning speed. Is this a super brain? Tony was horrified and sat down on the chair. What is this? A super brain can be so unreasonable. This is cheating. Chapter 11. Well, that's true. But how should I put it? In fact, I just learn and think faster. My creative ability is not necessarily better than yours. Leon thought for a while, worried that Tony would be hit, so he analyzed his abilities. The iron armor is a collection of the most comprehensive and top-notch knowledge you have. Every step is the most advanced application of relevant knowledge. Plus, you could be said to have guided me step by step last night. That's why I can master this knowledge very quickly. What I did was actually just copy your knowledge exactly as it was and make it my own." Leon nodded his head. "A learning and processing capability as powerful as a supercomputer, this is a super brain. But when it comes to innovation, I have to rely on my own talent. And super brains have limitations in comics. In some DC works, it will be said that most of the computing power of Superman's super brain will be used to restrain his own power. But I haven't encountered this problem yet. Leon made a small gesture with his index finger and thumb. The proportion of my brain power used to limit my superpowers is very small. So wait, Tony, wait for me to use your knowledge and my innovation to defeat you in 3 days. Tony, who fell into a chair, felt slightly better after hearing the explanation. Hearing this, he stood up with an unconvinced look on his face. Don't be ridiculous, kid, have you ever seen a plagiarist who can surpass the original author? There is no way my masterpiece will lose. Then let's wait and see, mortal wisdom. Leon left a provocative sentence and walked upstairs. In the parking garage, Tony's eyes were filled with fighting spirit again. You should take a rest first. As soon as the words fell, Tony felt his neck go numb and instantly lost consciousness. He's cheating. This guy is using his tricks outside the game. Before Tony fell asleep, he used his last consciousness to curse Leon in his mind, so don't play if you can't afford it. Look at this baby-like sleep. Leon commented, picked up Tony and threw him into the bedroom. Master Leon, you may not be able to win in this way, and Mr. Stark will not be convinced. Jarvis reminded kindly. It's best if he's not convinced. I'm also worried that he will be mentally damaged after being defeated by me and will be unable to recover. Leon walked into Tony's laboratory. You seem very confident, Jarvis asked in a statement tone. Of course. Leon turned on the power supplies one by one in front of Tony's usual workbench. After all, the most important thing in the early stage of the armor is to improve its functions, and the requirements for technological progress are not high. And I happen to have several transformation plans in my mind that can be achieved without using more advanced technology. Just kidding, let alone the dozens of steel armors developed by Tony in the movie. It's the armor in the comics, which he also knew in his previous life. The research and development ideas for those armors were fantasies in the previous life. But in this world, it is a road that has already been trodden by other Tonys. He only needs to develop along these lines, and he can always be one step ahead of his brother. Poor Tony, he will live in Leon's shadow from now on. Leon happily moved Dudu and Ben out of the garage and started making his own. Okay, Dudu, first put away the arc reactor that Tony has made on the table. Master Leon, Jarvis suddenly interrupted at this time. What's wrong? Miss Pepper is here, she's looking for you. It can't be done now. Tell her that I will be out in 3 days. But she's already down. Then tell her Tony is in the bedroom. Sorry, you might want to consider telling Miss Pepper the news yourself. After Jarvis finished speaking, Pepper went downstairs and appeared outside the transparent partition door of the laboratory. She caught sight of Leon, who was smiling and saying hello. She patted the partition glass angrily, entered the password on the door and walked in. Hi, Pepper, good morning. Leon spoke first. When Pepper saw it, he said with an aura of provocation, You didn't go to the company yesterday, Leon. Leon was busy learning to make armor yesterday and had forgotten about it. He said with a sneer, But George Bush has gone. Old Joe is down to earth and hardworking. He will definitely be able to share your work with you. But that's not why you hide at home. Pepper looked at Leon's messy hair after staying up all night, and couldn't help but straighten it. What did you do last night? Why are your hair and clothes so? Oh my God, could you have followed Tony's example again and called those cover girls and asked them to come to your home? Pepper's eyes became dangerous. Leon was like her child. If he was ruined by Tony's teachings, then she would definitely scold Tony today to the point of embarrassment. No. Leon interrupted hurriedly. What do you mean? I have never done this before, and I will never do that kind of thing in the future. Pepper, don't worry. It's all Tony's fault that I'm like this. He clarified the relationship. I came down yesterday and asked him to come back to the company to show up, but he dragged me to make the armor. He rolled his eyes and snatched the oldest arc reactor from Dadai's hand. Look, Tony has prepared a gift for you. A gift? Pepper became curious, and her attention was diverted to the arc reactor. This is from Tony's chest. Yes, that's the one. Leon artificially polished it. This gadget is an arc generator, a brand new cold nuclear reaction energy source, which represents the future of mankind. What Tony has been doing these days is research related to this little thing. That's the next step he planned for Stark Company, to bring better benefits to the world. And this arc reactor in my hand, was given to you by Tony. Leon Yezu said. This is a life-saving device he built in the cave of a terrorist organization. It is also the world's first small arc reactor. After he replaced this gadget, he originally planned to give it to you. But you also know that with his character, he would never be able to say anything straightforward in 100 years. So, Leon handed the arc reactor to Pepper. You know the meaning of this gift, right? Pepper didn't take it or speak. Because she was so moved. This gift is so meaningful and romantic. Pepper covered her mouth with her hands and was speechless for a moment. Did he really give it to me? Pepper carefully took over the arc reactor. The happiness came so unexpectedly that she was at a loss. Of course, but if it were him, he would definitely say. Leon drawled his voice. Pepper, I have many habits, but I don't have nostalgia, so just take this thing and dispose of it. Smash or burn it as you like. PFF'd. Leon imitated him so much that Pepper couldn't help laughing. She looked at the arc reactor in her hand and couldn't get enough of it. That's indeed what he would say. Pepper smiled broadly. Then where is he now? Leon shrugged. He was sleeping. He had been doing research all night a few days ago, so I knocked him out. I haven't slept for several days. Oh my God, Leon, you did the right thing. Is he in the bedroom now? Of course, go up and see him quickly. Okay, I'll go right away. Pepper nodded repeatedly and left the laboratory briskly and hastily. Before leaving, she didn't forget to look back. Leon, you too, you have to take a good rest, you know. I know. Leon showed a big smile. After packing these gadgets, I'm going to have a rest. Pepper gave him a look of affirmation. That's the best. Watching Pepper disappear into the corridor, Leon breathed a sigh of relief. Phew, solved. Jarvis spoke up. Master Leon, is it really okay for you to do this? Mr. Stark did not. What's the matter? If it weren't for me, Tony would definitely leave the arc reactor to Pepper, and his words would be similar to what I imitated. Leon didn't care. Simulate it yourself and see if it's the same result. Jarvis paused for a few seconds. ZZ. Based on Mr. Stark's past behavior pattern, the simulation results are 83% similar. Yeah, I just beautified the process. Leon spread his hands. As far as the results are concerned, Pepper got happy, Tony got happiness, and I got free time, a win-win-win situation. Jarvis immediately said, Mr. Stark will definitely be grateful to you if he knows. Leon raised his eyebrows. He must be grateful. Okay, no one will bother you now, let's officially start making the armor. When Tony woke up again, the world seemed a little weird. Pepper became very gentle. Jarvis always asked him how he was feeling today. As for Leon, this treacherous boy is not even allowed to enter the laboratory. That's his own laboratory. Humph, with Leon's secretive attitude, he might not be able to make a suit of armor, and he's afraid of losing face, so he won't reveal anything. Tony made a malicious guess after discovering that he had slept all day. Very good. Tony angrily walked into the underground garage and began to assemble his armor. Even if I can't enter the laboratory, I will beat Leon in the competition 2 days later, and then pour a cup of heated Coke into his mouth. Now, Dudu, go and push the bracket over. Then Ben. After waiting for a while, Tony realized something was wrong. Dad-I. Where are you, Dad-I? And Ben. He searched around and found that none of his intelligent robotic arms were there. I can't believe it. Leon didn't even leave me an arm, they all turned into his shape. Tony went crazy. In the end, Tony ran back to the laboratory and got his little assistants back from Leon. After all, he doesn't have super strength. If he wants to assemble the armor, he must rely on machinery. 2 days later, it's another rare sunny day. Los Angeles West Coast. The refracted sunlight and waves on the sea merge into one, and each wave is a prism. Looking out from Stark's mansion, the sea thousands of miles away is sparkling. Sailboats and cruise ships are coming and going on the sea, which is a peaceful scenery. But even this tranquility cannot reduce the smell of gunpowder in Stark's mansion today. In the cool-toned underground garage, Sunlight slants in from the entrance, dividing the space of hundreds of square meters into dark and bright halves. Leon walked into the underground garage from outside. Under the sunlight, his hair seemed to be somewhat transparent, shrouded in a golden shimmer. Tony was sitting at the far end of the garage. He wore a felt hat as appropriate, with the long brim covering his face. "I'm here," Leon said coldly. "I've been waiting for you for a long time." Tony's eyes were hidden under the brim of his hat. "You were destined to lose, you shouldn't have come." As Tony's words fell, a burst of passionate and sharp music suddenly sounded, echoing in the garage, as if someone would pull out a gun and shoot at any time. WTF? Tony was startled. He actually jumped out of his chair. "Maybe you feel that you have lost your momentum and lost a city first." Tony took off his hat and threw it on the table, asking angrily, "Jarvis, what the hell is this music?" "Mr. Stark, this is Extreme Ways, that Master Leon asked me to play in advance. It is an episode from the movie, The Bourne Supremacy, a few years ago." Tony could no longer be speechless. "Leon, what we are competing against today is armor, not a gun battle. Do you want to take out your gun and kill me if you can't compete with me later?" "What are you talking about, Tony?" Leon said he didn't understand. "I'm telling you with exciting music that you will lose today's competition." "Really? If talking big can lead to a winner, then those underground rappers in the United States will be the kings of the world," Tony insinuated. Leon was unmoved. "You are talking so shamelessly even before you show off your armor. Who is the one with a guilty conscience? Then show me what you have built in the past 2 days." Tony looked around deliberately. "But why is there nothing here except you? Could it be that you can't actually build a battle armor at all, and you are just trying to hold on and refuse to give in?" Tony opened his hands. "Leon, don't be like this. As a brother, I have always taught you to be honest. I can forgive you even if you apologize for things you can't do." "Oh, don't worry, you can see it later." Leon smiled. "Why not now?" Tony raised his chin. Leon pointed his finger at Tony and said, "Because according to international practice, ladies are given priority." Tony's face darkened. "Boy, I didn't remember that I taught you to talk to a gentleman like this." "Really?" Leon crossed his arms on his chest. "Then who told me that ladies come first on my graduation day when I was about to give a speech?" "That was almost a year ago." Tony pinched the bridge of his nose. "But you taught a young gentleman how to speak to another gentleman." Leon's posture remained unchanged. "Okay, fine, it's my fault, but you can't say such things again in the future, it's very rude." Tony was rarely serious. Leon nodded. "Of course not, I will only say this to you." Tony simply turned around and stopped talking harshly to this little fool. Tony stood in front of the experimental site he had built. In the middle of the field is a huge bracket. Underneath the stand. Standing there was a big guy 2 meters high, covered by a wide black cloth. Its edges and corners lift up the black cloth, giving it a human-like shape. That's obviously Tony's suit. You have to feel honored. Tony opened his hands. You will witness the debut of the greatest masterpiece in the world. And witness it twice. Leon did not deny it. It seems that's right. Come on, please start your performance. Tony's expression became more serious. He kept his hands open. Let's get started, Jarvis. Crunch. After the order was given, several mechanical arms stretched out from the bracket behind Tony and peeled off the black cloth. A steel-colored battle armor suddenly appeared. The steel-like flowing shell of the armor reflects the sunlight like water. Suddenly it seemed as if the basement was a little brighter. Several robotic arms kept moving, removing the parts of the armor one by one, and then began to dress Tony. The pieces of steel scales overlapped Tony's body and enveloped him, as if they were alive. When Tony completely put on the steel armor, the mechanical arm naturally moved away, and the armor's eyes suddenly lit up with a faint light. Tisk! Airflow spewed out from the gaps in each scale of the battle armor like breathing. Look, this is my armor. Tony controlled the armor to spread his arms, and the soles of his feet and palms sprayed flames at the same time. He flew up and was suspended in midair. This is the Mark II. Now, I can fly too. Wow, cool. Leon couldn't help but sigh as he looked at the metallic armor in front of him. Jarvis's voice appeared at an inappropriate time. Mr. Stark, the flight function of Mark II still needs more testing. No, 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 Jarvis, sometimes we have to start running before we can learn to walk slowly. Tony denied repeatedly. It was obvious that he couldn't wait to fly around in the sky. Tony levitated, flicked off his visor, and looked at Leon again. The Mark II is equipped with a series of equipment such as flight stabilizers and palm impact beams, which can be said to be 30 years ahead of the world. Now it's your turn, where is your armor? Leon did not answer immediately, but walked around Tony. Made entirely of titanium steel, with new energy as the core, and equipped with the Jarvis system, it is indeed a masterpiece that spans the ages. Then the voice changed, but this is not enough. I remember that there is gold in the spare materials, but you didn't use it. This will be a failure. Tony was confused. Why do we need to add gold material to build the armor? That is superfluous. In a few minutes, you will find the answer to this question on my armor. Leon put away the admiration in his eyes and pulled up his sleeves, revealing 2 shining bracelets. Look, this is my armor. Jarvis, start the program. Beep. An electronic sound passed by, and the lights on the 2 bracelets on Leon's wrists turned red. Then a roar came from the garage upstairs, accompanied by the crackling sounds of various things breaking. Tony's eyes were strange. It seems like something broke in my laboratory. What are you doing? Well, maybe there was an accident on the planned route. Look, it's coming. Leon suddenly floated up and spread his arms in the air. The next moment, a red and blue elliptical flight capsule spraying flames flew in from outside the garage. Could your armor be just a big iron can? That's really, my God, how is this possible? Tony subconsciously started to tease, but was immediately speechless. The red and blue flight capsule began to disintegrate after entering the garage. The parts of the steel armor unfolded in the air, spitting out flames, and stuck behind Leon in perfect fit. The pieces of red and blue scales, based on Leon's torso, were fastened on his body with incomparable precision. Finally, a battle armor with a blue base and red accents is formed. The eyes of the armor lit up, and each component was constantly adjusting its position according to Leon's movements, as if it were a living creature that could breathe. This is simply a work of art made of steel, with a streamlined figure that is both powerful and beautiful. After the armor was assembled, flames suddenly shot out from the soles of his feet and behind, keeping Leon afloat. He pointed at various locations on his body and listed his newly added functions one by one. My armor is driven by a bracelet. When it is idle, it acts as a flight cabin and can provide remote support when needed. Although it is not equipped with weapons for the time being, there are many positions reserved for adding weapons. The most important thing is that this suit of armor has a propulsion device on the back, which allows you to free your hands during flight and use it to fight or wave to say hello. In addition, there are many functions, such as the new liquid filtration function, which allows users to solve problems anywhere during flight. Even though Tony was so surprised that he opened his mouth, he hurriedly interrupted. Wait a minute, what I said just now seems a bit disgusting. Are you going to pee while wearing the armor? Don't you find it disgusting? Oh, really? I thought you would like this feature. Leon narrowed his eyes. If others don't know, how can he not understand Tony? This liquid filtration function was specially shown off by this guy in the movie. The reason why he interrupted him now was probably because Tony, an old man, couldn't stand the excitement and had to pick some bones in the egg. Would I like it? Just kidding, this disgusting useless function is a blasphemy to the armor. Tony said seriously. Leon raised his eyebrows. Then anyway, I won this competition, right? He clapped his fingers. Your armor doesn't have as many functions as mine, and it's not as easy to wear as mine. There are so many differences, so. No, Leon, you made a mistake. Tony quickly started to make up for it. What is a battle armor? It's a weapon. Its main function is combat. It's a waste of time to have so many additional abilities. So, Leon motioned for Tony to continue. So, when comparing armors, the most important thing is to compare their performance, such as speed, environmental adaptability, and strength. I have no objection, so how can we compare? Leon thought for a while, and then he started to think about it. I suggest that we fly to the sky together and see who can fly faster and farther. Tony snapped his fingers. I think so too. Okay, let's go out, let Jarvis shout start, and then. Leon increased the thruster power and flew outward. Oh, Leon, are you going to compete with me in armor? Tony felt something was wrong. How else can we compare? Leon stopped. I mean, you can fly by yourself, right? What if your armor isn't fast enough and you fly faster than me? Tony finally remembered that Leon's own speed was dozens of times that of the steel armor. Am I the kind of person who cheats? You don't know how to cheat, so why did you knock me out 2 days ago? Okay, then I will come out of the armor, Jarvis, and you will control the armor. Wait, Jarvis will control it. You mean, this armor of yours can be completely unmanned? Tony hasn't gotten to that point yet. What do you think? My armor is strong. It's very, well, I mean, it's a good idea, but I've thought of this before, but I just didn't have enough time. Then you were really awesome, Tony. Okay, Jarvis, are you ready? We're going to start a competition. Tony changed the topic with a little hesitation. Okay, Mr. Stark, I will start the timing in 3 seconds. Are you ready? I have long been ready. Jarvis gave the order. Ready, 3, 2, 1, start. The two armors ignited their thrusters at the same time, took off at full power, and soared into the sky, with long tail flames streaking across the sky. Leon looked at the clouds where the two disappeared and couldn't help but complain. Actually, if you ask me, both armors are very slow. Sure enough, war armor has no other effect on me except feelings. Then he twisted his collar with both hands, and the biological force field spread out, rushing into the sky like a retroreflective meteor. Oh, Tony continued to accelerate in the sky. He had never had the experience of soaring so freely in the sky. The sky has been high above humans for millions of years. Flying into the sky and conquering the sky are the desires engraved in human genes. No wonder so many people have tried to fly in history. This feeling is really great. Tony was so excited that he felt proudly that he was the king of machines who would win at this moment. Jarvis, is Leon's armor far behind me now? He felt the answer was yes. However, Jarvis is always so ruthless. I'm sorry, Mr. Stark, I'm sorry to tell you that you have been thrown away by the mecha controlled by my subroutine. What? Tony was stunned. This is impossible. Sorry, the fact is that the distance between you and Master Leon's armor is already 700 meters. Tony raised his head and looked upward, but layers of clouds and mist in the sky made it difficult for him to see the scene above. This must be a mistake. Speed up, Jarvis, speed up. The Mark II exploded with greater propulsion, pushed away the sea of clouds, and moved backwards. However, a few minutes later, Tony still couldn't see Leon's armor, not even the exhaust fumes. What the hell, why is it so fast? Because Master Leon uses a more coordinated movement system and reduces the weight of the armor, the acceleration and top speed have been improved. Jarvis reported. Okay, now I kind of admit that the kid is a genius, but I can't lose this competition. Jarvis, use excess power. Sir, I want to remind you that continuing upward may cause the armor to freeze because the temperature is too low. Listen to me and keep flying. A few minutes later, Tony faintly saw the tail flame of Leon's armor. Okay, that's it, catch up with it and then surpass it. Sir, the outer layer of the armor has been frosted. Continuing to fly may cause damage to the components. Don't worry about it, keep accelerating. Tony is now full of enthusiasm, and his competitive spirit has been completely mobilized. In the hot-blooded comics, he will definitely explode next, and then he will surpass Leon's armor and achieve a counterattack. It's a pity that the physical rules of the Marvel world will not give in to him for such reasons. Marvel only the more tragic people are, the more they can ignore physics and cheat and counterattack. As the altitude continued to climb, layers of frost began to cover the Mark II's outer shell, quickly spreading and thickening. The armor's acceleration began to decrease. Jarvis didn't have time to remind him. The next moment, the Mark II suddenly stalled. All current circuits inside the armor were frozen, and the power was cut off instantly. Wait, what's going on? Tony's upright figure lost his balance and fell rapidly like a frog with claws and teeth. Jarvis, open your wings. Tony found that the armor was too cold to function and wanted to call Jarvis. But the current is short-circuited and the intelligence system has already stopped running. The armor fell faster and faster, and gravity exerted its power mercilessly at this moment. No, no, Leon. Leon, help me, Tony shouted in panic. The next second, no problem, Tony. Leon instantly appeared in front of Mark II, blocking it from the waist, and its downward trend stopped instantly. This sense of security is so good. Tony was in shock. Oh my god, it was really thrilling just now. Thank you, Leon, although I know you must be watching me make a fool of myself down there. Don't say that. In fact, I want to see if you can calm down and reverse the crisis. You better think so. Tony took a deep breath and gasped to calm down. On the other side, Jarvis flew down in Leon's armor. Sir, it's great that you're okay. It was really thrilling just now. Jarvis expressed concern in a mechanical voice. Leon continued to carry Tony. Okay, now the competition is over, let's go back. Tony had no objection. On the way back, he suddenly asked, the gold you mentioned is used to solve the problem of high-altitude icing. Yes, adding gold material can allow the armor to continue to operate in extreme environments. Tony fell completely silent. Back in the underground garage, Tony took off his armor with the help of his smart arm. Leon, you win. He sat down with some frustration. Yes, I won. Leon smiled happily. He walked to Tony and sat down. But, actually, you also won, Tony. He explained to Tony's puzzled eyes. It was you who taught me how to build the steel armor so that I could make it. It's like if you taught other mechanics this knowledge, wouldn't they really be able to learn it? Of course they can learn it, and even because of everyone's different ideas, they can also create armor with more functions than you. The most difficult thing in this world is never learning an extension, but creation from scratch. Tony, and you, are the one who created it. Without you, maybe 20 years later, no one would be able to build a small arc reactor, and no one would be able to build a steel armor. I defeated you this time, but I just perfected some things that you didn't have time to perfect. Tell me, Tony, do you think you can't do these things? Tony immediately shook his head. Of course not. Well, give me some time and I can do it. Look, Leon patted Tony on the shoulder. Tony, you just lack a little time, and I just used my super brain to save this time. Tony's frustration just now slowly dissipated, and his eyes were a little complicated. Leon, you are really different anymore. Did you just realize that I already look like a little Superman? How can I still be the same as before? No, I mean, you've grown up. Sorry, I can't tell for a moment whether you are hurting me or praising me. Of course I'm complimenting you. Well, Tony, I want to say that you have grown up since you came back from Afghanistan this time. After all, you never knew how to. Stop. Why did you suddenly turn around and scold me? Look, what I just said. Quote. You won again. Oh, with this desire to win in adolescence, you should really go to school in Columbia as soon as possible instead of annoying me at home all day long. Look, Tony, you're in a hurry. Get out, get away from me. Okay, I'll leave smoothly. Leon picked up his armor and ran away. This kid. Tony shook his head helplessly, thought for a while, and suddenly laughed. It's really amazing. A few days later, rain. The sky was filled with dark clouds, and the drizzle turned the sea outside Stark's mansion into honeycomb. Underground garage. Leon wore a tight-fitting sensor suit with round iron plates attached to various parts of his body. There were induction wires at the ends of the iron plates leading to the huge machine. Are you sure this iron pillar can test my strength? Leon moved his wrist. Today was the day he and Tony had agreed to test their powers and new abilities. Then the sky just dawned, when the sun struggled to cast a few rays of light between the gaps in the continuous dark clouds. Tony happily dragged him out of bed. After washing up and having breakfast, the two of them arrived at the underground garage. On the wall of the underground garage facing the sea, a circular iron pier with a radius of 3 meters is fixed. This is a prop to test your strength. Why do you always use a questioning tone to state a fact? Tony was very confident. He introduced. After you went to space half a year ago, I had a premonition that such a day would come, so I built this strength tester here in advance. Much of it comes from a tungsten alloy that I specially synthesized. High melting point, high density, high wear resistance. It won't deform even if 1,000,000 tons of weight is placed on it, and it won't be damaged even by an impact of tens of thousands of tons. The alloy I created during the process of synthesizing this tester, even if it is used to build ships, will be of a type far ahead of its time. Tony stood in front of the computer desk. So don't worry, I can guarantee that it will not be damaged by you. Leon was still skeptical. Tony, you know, your confident look now is exactly the same as when we competed a few days ago. Tony was choked. This is not the same thing. In short, you only need to stand in front of the tester, punch with all your strength, and leave the rest to me. No, that's not safe. Leon said, at least put on your armor. Tony slapped his forehead. It's not safe for me to be more than 10 meters away from you. When did you become so arrogant? Put on the armor. Leon repeated. Okay, I'll wear it. Tony raised his hands. As long as it makes our little princess feel at ease, I can wear it. The 2 bracelets on his wrists glowed red. A few seconds later, a red gold flight capsule flew into the garage and quickly transformed into a battle armor to wrap around Tony. Mark III. This is a new armor created by Tony directly copying Leon's data in the past few days. In addition to the fact that the energy source of this armor is not made of new elements, it has almost the same functions as the Mark VII in the movie. You know, the Mark VII is a battle armor that only appeared in the first phase of the Avengers, and its functions are extremely powerful. Parenthetical note. Leon helped to complete the project so quickly. Another bracket. Tony paid special attention to the liquid circulation function and deliberately excluded this function in front of Leon. He will definitely suffer from this in the future, and then succumb to the law of true fragrance. Okay now. Tony stretched his legs and made a gesture. I'm looking forward to your performance. Leon pouted speechlessly. This old man even wanted to copy his lines. I hope the tester you build can be as hard as your mouth. He stood in front of the dark tester and took a deep breath. For a moment, the airflow in the basement began to surge into wind. Tony on the other side had never seen such a scene before. He looked around at the papers flying in the sky, feeling dumbfounded. Then he saw Leon slowly squatting back, his muscles bulging like the most perfect stone sculptures. Why, it feels like something's not quite right. Tony stared blankly at Leon, let out a low drink, and punched fiercely. Then, the entire underground garage was turned upside down in an instant. Rumble. The roar like a missile exploding in his ears filled Tony's world. There were gravels and dust everywhere as far as the eye could see. The sudden strong wind blew Tony down, tables and chairs fell on him, and he was about to be swept away by the hurricane to an unknown place. If Jarvis hadn't activated the suit's propeller in time, Tony would have disappeared into the underground garage. Fortunately, all this commotion did not last long. After more than 10 seconds, the feeling of heaven and earth shattering left. The entire underground garage was densely dusty and visibility was almost zero. Cough, 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 what happened? Tony turned off the propeller, fell to the ground and staggered a few steps. Then, he heard Leon exhaling again. Call. The wind picked up again, but this time it was much gentler, blowing away only some debris and smoke in the air. Now the vision is clear. But Tony's brain shut down. The basement, which was originally a minimalist style, has now become a ruined version of the Syrian war. It's riddled with holes, like a dilapidated house. Everything in the room, including glass, machinery, lights, was gone. The dozen or so limited edition sports cars parked in the underground garage are gone. Even the tester on the wall, which he thought could withstand almost all impacts, had only a hole left. On the other side of the hole is the misty sea. My lord. The time comes in the afternoon. The location is a meadow outside Los Angeles. The characters are still 2 brothers, Leon and Tony. The drizzle kept falling, and Leon, wearing his shirt, kept knocking on a huge round iron pillar. You said this Iron Man, can withstand my strength. He complained. In the end, I didn't even use half of my strength, and it changed from a flat shape to a convex body. And it fell into the sea, so I had to go to the bottom of the sea to fish it out. Come on, Leon. Tony stood 50 meters away, wearing a steel suit, manipulating computer calibration data and answering via the radio. God would never have imagined that your power would be so outrageous. God knows you've only been exposed to the sun for half a year, so how could your strength increase so much? It's almost like exponential growth. Look at the 3 months you spent in the sun in Los Angeles half a year ago. It took more than 90 days to increase the power by more than 400 tons. Jarvis and I built models based on data from that period. It is predicted that when you come back, your power will be between 1,000 tons and 5,000 tons, and your speed will not exceed Mach 5. Who would have thought you could be so strong? And look at the TV series, Smallville. Clark Kent can't fly even in high school, but he has been in the sun for more than 10 years. Leon stopped what he was doing and pressed the headset. Do you still watch the Superman TV series? I think that movie was very well shot, and it showed Superman's journey of growth. But you probably haven't seen the second half, because Superman's expressiveness is outrageous. Tony retorted. Then he doesn't get stronger as fast as you. Well, maybe it's because I'm an adult, or maybe it's because I'm more efficient in the sun and space. Leon guessed. He punched the tester hard again. Okay. The tester has returned to its original state. How to test it now? For the time being, we can't find a testing tool that can fully withstand your full punch. We have to change the method and use multi-dimensional data to estimate the approximate value. Tony always has flexible solutions. What do you want me to do? Leon asked. Exerting force in the air shouldn't affect your condition, right? It doesn't matter, I have a biological force field. Tony adjusted all the instruments and said on the radio. Then you fly up and push down the tester just like Superman pushed the asteroid. Although this can't test your punching strength, it can test your pressing strength. We will test your punching speed later and let Jarvis combine the data to roughly calculate the strength of your punch. Okay. Leon jumped into the air, inverted his body in the air, and placed his hands down on the iron pillar. I'm going to start exerting my strength. Remember to use your best strength. Certainly. Leon's eyes narrowed, his muscles bulged, and he pushed down with all his strength. Tony reacted quickly. Almost instantly, the number on the screen jumped to 9 digits, which startled him. And the data was still rising rapidly. It wasn't until Leon roared in the distance that it stopped growing and began to fluctuate up and down. Okay. Tony's voice was trembling. Leon exhaled the breath from his chest. What is my thrust? Tony swallowed. 370 million kilograms, which is 370,000 tons. Jarvis predicts that your single arm strength should be between 140,000 and 190,000 tons. So high. Leon couldn't help but be surprised. This value is really not low. The steel-bodied Superman who just debuted in the DC movie has only 800,000 tons of power in the setting. Although it was his first appearance and was not fully developed yet, he had been exposed to the sun for more than 20 years. But he had only been exposed to the sun for more than half a year. Besides, this kind of power is basically enough for him to be invincible on Earth. But it's still not enough. Leon clenched his fist. The Earth is just a small pond, and there are many giants outside the pond. I still have a long way to go, and I have to continue to find ways to become stronger. Tony listened to Leon's thoughts on the other side and rolled his eyes. He was even put in the mood to refute by this wave of Versailles, so he directly operated the computer and started the next test. Next is the punch speed test. Punch at the highest speed you think you can endure when attacking. Leon thought for a while. I usually use the biological force field to protect the surrounding environment when I punch, so I will use the fastest punch speed that the biological force field can withstand at full strength. He stood on the iron pillar and made another power-charging action. Shrink your waist, twist your hips, punch. A standard straight punch. The fighting skills he learned a few days ago allowed Leon to maximize his strength. It's just that he just swung this punch in the air, without the tens of thousands of tons of power attached. Beep. Tony was still watching Leon from a distance. In his eyes, Leon didn't even move. As a result, a value suddenly popped up on his computer without any warning. 10,769 meters per second, close to Mach 32. Is this the maximum speed when you exert maximum force? Tony put his hands on the table and stared at the screen. Leon thought Tony was thinking the same thing as him and felt that the speed was too slow. It's a bit slow. Actually, I can go faster, but if I use my full strength to exceed this speed, my biological force field will be broken through and affect the surrounding environment, just like in the garage this morning. Tony smacked his tongue. It can actually be faster. This is simply a god on Earth. God is just like that. This is not enough. When I become stronger in the future, the biological force field will also become stronger, and the punching speed can also increase. Not enough. Tony felt puzzled. Do you know how powerful your punch of hundreds of thousands of tons would be at this speed? Probably, like a small meteorite falling to the earth. Tony wiped his face with both hands, almost. Jarvis, tell him the specific value. Yes, sir. Master Leon, calculate based on the model. With an acceleration reaching Mach 31 in an instant, a full punch from your single arm can explode with an impact of more than 1.5 trillion newtons in 1 second, which is equivalent to the simultaneous explosion of 240 Hiroshima atomic bombs. Tony slammed the table at this time. It is equivalent to the power of 3.6 million tons of TNT. And this does not take into account the fact that the force-bearing area of your fist is small and the pressure will be greater. Jarvis answered again. Yes, Master Leon, you are now a high-explosive hydrogen bomb that can walk at will. You also have unlimited firepower. Tony took 2 deep breaths. He was really excited now. Who would have thought that this little brother at home, who was noisy with him every day, would actually hide such a huge power? Do you still feel that your strength is not enough now? I don't know why you are so eager to become stronger. Could it be that I didn't protect you well enough when you were a child? No, Tony, of course you are very nice to me. You even hang me around your neck when trying to pick up girls, but there are many reasons why. Leon thought for a while, and it seemed that Tony was right. Isn't it just because he was worried about the Time Administration coming to arrest him every day when he was a child, and he had a psychological shadow, so now he desires to continue to become stronger. After experiencing the most powerless fear all day long, I understand more and more how important it is to have strength. What's the reason? Because I only care about picking up girls, so you're so jealous that you want to beat me with your super strength. Tony was confused and complained casually. Then I really should beat you. Leon pressed the communication earbud. Okay, let's proceed to the next test. There will be things that will shock you later. For the next hour, Leon successively conducted heat ray temperature tests, freezing breathing range tests, fluoroscopy tests, and flight tests. Tony's exclamations went from horrified at the beginning to half dead at the end. From God to shit to you deserve to die. I don't blame Tony for being insensitive, I just blame Leon for being so good at Versailles. The heat ray, which has a temperature of 6,000 degrees and can be adjusted in power and range at will, is barely usable in his mouth. He said that the frozen breath that could instantly freeze several kilometers of land was still far from enough. He said that the clairvoyant eye, which could see the whole world, could not see through lead and was defective, so it was better not to use it. Even with super hearing, he can say that being too noisy is of no use. After a set of procedures, Tony had no other thoughts and just wanted to use his size 42 leather shoes to kiss Leon hard on the face. Then what? What's the next ability to test? Tony's eyes were dull, and he sat slumped in the chair, sliding the mouse feebly with one hand. The next ability, well, no more, it has been tested, Tony. Leon spread his hands. Did you finish the test? Tony seemed to have heard some good news, and he suddenly became energetic and straightened his back again. He enlarged the chart on the computer. I thought you could give me a full-page list of abilities. A whole page. It can't be that exaggerated. Leon flew towards Tony. Why is it impossible? Tony said in an exaggerated tone. I remember you said that you have all the abilities of Superman. I thought you also wanted to demonstrate the ability to reverse time like in Superman 1, or use heat rays to treat wounds. Leon fell in front of Tony. Stop joking, how could I have such ability? You said it, you have all the abilities that Superman has. Tony emphasized, I still remember the confident look on your face when you said this in the garage. Leon was speechless. This time he was hit by his own boomerang. Who told this world that there is no Man of Steel Superman played by Henry Cavill? Other Supermen in movies and TV shows are much more powerful than Heng Chau. So what he was comparing in his mind at that time was actually Heng Chau. Leon sighed. Okay, I take it back. In fact, I just have the ability of a Kryptonian. The reason why Superman is so strong is because he is the protagonist in the comics. His fellow Kryptonians are not as powerful as him. And so do I. Leon walked to the computer and checked the records. Don't look at how fast my strength has increased. I estimate that the current level is actually not far from my limit. Tony thinks this is a very interesting topic, really. In fact, this is reasonable. A race of life that can reproduce should not have the ability to evolve infinitely. He touched his chin with his hand. Maybe we can do a simple experiment and build a model to estimate your future growth curve. This is what I want to do, Leon agreed readily, but I have to ask you to help me with the subsequent tests. I'm fine, Tony answered. Leon smiled and patted Tony on the shoulder. Thank you, Tony. But now, it seems that we have to go back home. There is still a basement waiting for us to repair it. You shouldn't have mentioned that basement. I've already started to imagine Pepper being angry. Tony looked up at the sky, where countless raindrops were falling. Let's do this, leave Pepper to you and leave the basement to me. I don't really like this deal, but it's a deal. Night. Leon used a biological force field combined with heat vision and freezing breath to solidify the last part of the rebuilt wall. He casually wiped the cement in his palm onto the one-piece jeans on his body. Phew, over. He leaned against the wall and looked around, and was very satisfied with his results tonight. The war-damaged basement that was riddled with holes has now been completely renovated, and even the paint has been repainted. All we can say is that the productivity of superpowers is high. After confirming that there was no problem, Leon walked upstairs. He walked to the yard, casually took off his jeans, and plunged into the swimming pool. After swimming dozens of times, he emerged from the water, tossed his hair back, leaned against the edge of the pool and looked up at the stars. On a summer night, the swimming pool is filled with mist, and the sound of waves crashing on the shore is refreshing. Strings of water droplets gathered on Leon's body and flowed down his chest, making every inch of his muscle lines appear particularly clear. Are you very tired? Congratulations, you have been promoted to the decoration boy of the Stark family. From now on, the family will no longer have to worry about decoration issues. Tony's voice suddenly appeared behind him. Leon didn't look back. It's only this time. Next time you break something at home, Tony, you can fix it yourself. Tony handed over a glass of red wine. Next time, it's your turn to face Pepper. She just left and kept talking about me, saying that I only do damage at home, and urging me to go back to the company to work. She's right. It's really time for you to go to work, Tony. Leon couldn't help laughing. Which company's president would stay at home like you and never show up at the company? Such a company will lose money and go bankrupt sooner or later. Tony swung the red wine. Maybe there happens to be a president like this next to me. Screw you, I will find a successor president soon, unlike you. Leon also picked up the wine glass and took a sip. The conversation between the two ended here. The swimming pool was quiet, with only the night wind and the sound of water still echoing. After a while, Tony actually jumped into the water with a splash. After swimming a few laps, he stopped next to Leon with a slight breath, and looked at the starry sky like him. Leon, Tony suddenly said, but there was no further words for a long time. What are you doing? Just say what you want, why are you so coy? Leon saw through Tony's little thoughts at a glance. Tony shrugged. I just think that maybe we two brothers should have a good talk. Why do you want to talk all of a sudden? What is this? Tony's sudden concern. Do you think I scared you today? Tony nodded. You did scare me, but you didn't scare me either. I just never thought that your power would become as outrageous as you showed today. He paused and said while drinking red wine, that has exceeded the limit of what the world can understand. The power of one punch is equivalent to 3.6 million tons of TNT. No one in the world can stop you from doing anything. Not even me, Tony exclaimed. He looked at Leon's sculptural and perfect figure. You are too strong. If anyone else had participated in today's test, they might even be too scared to sleep tonight. Then can you? Leon asked directly. Of course not. I am your dearest brother. You peed on me when you were 2 years old, and I would still take you to the dance to see beautiful girls. How could I be worried and scared just because you have become stronger? I will only be happy for you. Tony was so sincere. Leon knows that Tony never lies, because no one is qualified to let him choose to lie. Moreover, Tony's tone at this moment was extremely gentle, like running water, making people naturally choose to believe him. I know, Leon, you have never been a person who likes to do whatever you want with power, money or whatever. After all, in the past 18 years, almost 19 years, you have never done anything bad by taking advantage of the money and other people's popularity. Just like me, Tony didn't forget to mention himself. So I wanted to ask you if you have any plans for the future. At this moment, Tony really looks like a father who takes great pains to educate and teach his son who is about to enter society. From his words, it could be heard that he was afraid that Leon, who suddenly had power, would be as unbalanced as a nouveau riche. Even though Leon felt that this concern seemed to look down on him. But I have to admit that Tony's concern after letting go of his arrogance is really touching. After Tony asked, he was worried that Leon would be disgusted, and even took the initiative to make a joke. For example, do you really want to be a Superman and save the world? Drag all the nuclear bombs to outer space and destroy them? Or find a few more girlfriends and pass on your powerful Superman genes? Come on, tell me. You don't look confused at all. You must have your own ideas. Come and satisfy my curiosity, brother. Tony followed the good temptation. Anyway, if I had this ability, I would date 10 cover girls in one night, and then fly out of the Earth to see if there are any aliens in the solar system. It would be best if I could meet a few more alien beauties. Leon laughed dumbly. This is indeed what Tony would do. I'm afraid there are no beauties in aliens, only alien facehuggers waiting for you. He also joked along. I'm different from you. I actually don't have that many ideas. How I lived my life in the past will be how I live my life in the future. I used to be the second young master of the Stark Group. Wherever I went I met smiling faces, and all the people in the world gave me kindness. Now that I have become stronger, this will not change. I have no reason to do bad things at all, don't you think? Yes, that's great, kid. Tony nodded, his eyes filled with relief that my cub has grown up. Leon took a deep breath. Tony, if you look at me like this again, I will definitely beat your ass with the slippers that Pepper just bought. I'm just your brother, don't always think of me as your son, okay? Now Tony was unwilling. Leon, look at how sensitive you are. Come on, maybe we can have a drink to make you feel like an adult. What you're saying is that I'm not an adult, so how can I still be like you? Leon and Tony clinked glasses, but they didn't fall for the trap in Tony's words. He continued, I haven't finished what I just said. While I don't plan to change my daily routine, I will start on a different path. What way? Tony straightened up in the water. Chasing the road to becoming stronger. Leon drank the red wine in the glass in one gulp. That's it, but you are already strong enough. Tony was stunned. There is no kryptonite in this world, and there is no one you can't beat, so why do you need to become stronger? Leon smiled and said, not now, but there will always be in the future. Tony was noncommittal. Then how do you plan to become stronger? Continue to bask in the sun. Leon shook his head. Of course I need to be exposed to the sun, but there is a limit to the height I can reach just by relying on the sun. So I plan to improve my strength from many aspects. Learn magic, learn qigong, and then learn scientific knowledge. Then when I have enough knowledge, maybe I can increase the upper limit of my body by studying genes. The bright moon was reflected in the water, and Leon gently clenched his fists in the water. Researching genes. A super soldier serum like Captain America. Tony had a bad feeling. That thing shouldn't be useful to you, right? It's really useless, but what I want to study is my own genes. Leon looked at Tony. It's Kryptonian genes. Tony was stunned for a while, then his expression changed. Are you sure you want to do this? Those who study Kryptonian genes in the comics end up creating a day of destruction. It can be seen that Tony has indeed read a lot of DC comics recently and knows about Doomsday. That is the biological weapon of the Kryptonians. It only knows how to kill and will only bring destruction to the world. Even Krypton itself cannot master that power. Tony looked serious. This is not a smooth road, nor is it a broad road. If the genes of Kryptonians were so easy to study and they had so many super brains, everyone on Krypton would have become gods long ago. Leon, maybe you have to think about it again. You don't have to study genes. There are many ways to become stronger. I can find them with you. Leon shook his head. I will try other methods, but I will not give up starting with genes to fundamentally improve strength. With a headache, Tony submerged himself into the water and washed his face. He is now like one of those parents who are faced with their rebellious teenagers. All they want to do is try to persuade them, but they don't know where to start. In this case, Leon, have you ever thought about what would happen if there was an accident in the research and you became the Doomsday? Tony guided and said, as I said just now, no one on Earth can stop you, you can do whatever you want. And if you like this become the son of destruction, what will happen to the Earth? Is there no other ending besides destruction? You are a little extreme now, Leon. Leon looked at Tony blankly, lost in thought. Tony is actually a relatively radical person in the original movie. He will never retreat when it is time to forge ahead, and he will stick to his decision when faced with major decisions. Just like the birth of Ultron and the Civil War in Avengers. Part of the reason why these incidents occurred is that Tony's personality is too radical and he never looks back once he has made up his mind. And now, Tony, such a radical person, is actually telling him that he is a bit extreme. This forced Leon to start to reflect on whether he was indeed reckless for the sake of power. Okay, I admit, directly studying Kryptonian genes is indeed a bit extreme. After a long time, Leon nodded slowly, letting Tony breathe a sigh of relief. But the next second Leon changed the topic. However, after I get some kryptonite, I will still start this research. Tony's eyes widened. Wait, kryptonite? There is kryptonite in our world. Are you kidding? Of course we don't have it in our world. Leon glanced at Tony strangely. I'm talking about going to the 600th world to get some kryptonite. Now Tony was confused. When we get to DC, no, are we ready to start talking about the content of our dreams at night? Quote. I'm serious. Leon shook the empty wine glass. I have a hunch that my time travel ability should be able to travel to the 600th world. So when I get the kryptonite, I'll put it in your hands. I'll really become Doomsday. You can kill me. Tony simply ignored the second half of Leon's sentence. He was confused. Let's not talk about kryptonite. Time travel. Do you still have this ability? Does the DC universe also exist? Although it is theoretically possible. Leon's head was full of black lines. I remember telling you on my birthday that I had awakened my Kryptonian bloodline and my ability to travel through time and space, but you didn't believe any of it. In fact, Tony never believed that Leon had awakened his Kryptonian bloodline. I just think he has a genetic mutation that makes him stronger in the sun. It was Leon who came back from the universe this time and showed more and more abilities similar to Superman. Only then did Tony believe it. However, another time travel ability that Leon mentioned at the beginning has been forgotten by Tony. Ah, I remember now. Tony pretended to suddenly realize, in other words, you can also travel to other worlds. Well, that's right. Leon ignored Lao Dang's pretentiousness. This guy just forgot. My God, you are such a little genius. Now you have proven the theory of parallel worlds, or the theory of different worlds. Tony was startled, but then he looked sincere. When you travel across the world, you must take me to experience it once. Also, if you want to find kryptonite, you have to take me with you. Tony knew that he could no longer persuade Leon, so he directly chose to join. At least when you are turned into an ordinary person by kryptonite, I can take the opportunity to kick you. Leon was used to this kind of awkward concern. After thinking about it, he didn't refuse directly. We'll talk about it then. Okay, the topic of pursuing power is over for now. Seeing that Tony wanted to say something else, he changed the subject. Let's go back to the house first. Later we have to talk about what I said before and what I have wanted to do for a long time. Half an hour later, Leon and Tony sat around the lab bench. Tony was wearing a bathrobe, and his expression became more and more solemn as he listened to what Leon said. There are only 3 things I want to do when I come back this time. Leon raised his finger, as if asking Tony to help him take the lives of 3 people. The first thing is to deal with Obadiah. This goal has been achieved. I have always emphasized to you that he has a problem, and this time it has been proved. The second thing is to deal with the Ten Rings gang. They kidnapped you, then I will help you kill them. I will start taking action tomorrow. The third thing is to investigate the truth behind the death of our parents. Everything was fine up front, but when it came to the third thing, Tony couldn't sit still. The truth. What truth? Didn't they die accidentally in a car accident? Leon couldn't directly say that he already knew that the murderer was Bucky, the Winter Soldier. There is no basis for this and he has no evidence. Besides, his target isn't just Bucky. Only the entire Hydra combined is worthy of letting him show his strength. I've always suspected it. Leon put his hands together to support his chin, very deeply. I wonder if it was really a car accident. Why didn't I, the most vulnerable, die, but they did? Leon, that's because the car was on fire and they couldn't get out. You were thrown out and your neck was wrapped twice in a baby wrap. Tony's thinking was unexpectedly clear at this time. But there was actually a faint impulse in his heart, and he wanted to believe everything Leon said immediately. Perhaps he has been waiting for a long time for someone to tell him, your parents' death was not an accident. 18 years ago, he was out of town when the couple died and was having trouble with Howard. When he received the news of his death, he was still thinking that he would return to Los Angeles after a while. The face of the old man at home was really annoying. Until someone handed him the seal with the death notice written on it. Only then did he realize that something was gone forever. How much he wanted to vent, he was filled with endless anger towards himself, and even towards the death notice. Over the years, Tony has accepted the fact that his parents are dead, and has developed a peculiar habit of never taking anything from others. But deep down in his heart, he may have been longing for someone to tell him. The death of my parents was not an accident. In this way, he might be able to legitimately seek revenge on the murderer. The anger towards the past self that is hidden under the playboy appearance can also be vented. But the more this happens, the more Tony understands that he must investigate everything clearly and not affect innocent people. In the caves of Afghanistan, he learned not only battle armor, but also respect for life. On the surface it seems like this, but there is another possibility. Leon stared into Tony's eyes. The baby was also going to die. The cloth wrapped around his neck had already killed him, but the murderer who faked the accident scene and left didn't know that there was krypton hidden in the baby's body. Bloodline. Leon couldn't figure out why he could survive that accident before. The controlled Winter Soldier cannot have the idea of respecting the old and loving the young, unless it is a mistake. But how could such a killing machine fail? It wasn't until Leon awakened his Kryptonian blood that he suddenly realized that it was not the Winter Soldier's mistake that saved his life, but the blood hidden in his body. Although he did not awaken, it also gave him a stronger vitality, allowing him to survive the disaster. Leon's words struck through Tony's mind like thunder and lightning. You mean? His mind was rumbling. Leon didn't care about Tony's gaffe and continued. When I was a child, I also thought this conjecture was very unfounded. Obviously, all appraisals have agreed on the fact of the accident. Why do I still make groundless speculations? But after awakening my ability, I knew that the guess might be correct, and it was the truth that I subconsciously believed. Although the memories of the accident were not retained by my immature brain at the time, they were also etched in my subconscious. This sentence is quite true. After awakening his super brain, Leon had some hazy perceptions of some things that happened before he was 1 year old, but it was not clear. Human memory is a very wonderful thing. The brain relies on neurons to transmit excitement, thereby engraving scenes in the memory storage area. Before he was 1 year old, Leon's brain was very immature and his neurons were not fully developed, so he was unable to imprint complete memories. Therefore, even if he awakens his super brain, it is impossible to retrieve those memories that do not exist in the first place. He can only vaguely flash some scenes and images in his mind. But these are just physical explanations. In a world like Marvel with mysterious powers, maybe tomorrow or maybe one day in the future, Leon will be able to retrieve all the memories he had before he was 1 year old. Leon's tone suddenly changed. In the past few days since I came back, I haven't given up my pursuit of this matter. I have found out the truth, Tony. Are you telling the truth? Tony stood up abruptly, his pupils gradually dilated, and he began to reveal surprise and anger. Leon's tone did not change. My super hearing found them. The murderer is one of theirs. Who are they? Tony already believed it. His tone was as cold as a knife. Hydra. Leon finally gave the answer. Impossible. Hydra has died. That is the last chapter in history. Tony subconsciously questioned. He completely believed what Leon said, but he still felt unbelievable. They are dead, but only temporarily. If Hydra cuts off one head, two will grow back. They have been resurrected. Leon's direct spoiler. I have checked a lot of confidential files of secret departments in the past few days. Discovered behind the world's major international official organizations. There is a secret organization that is unknown to the world and takes orders from the International Security Council. They are called the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Agency, I call it SHIELD for short, and their headquarters is located in New York. The predecessor of this organization is the Strategic Science Corps established by our father and others. In Project Paperclip after the end of World War II, they recruited some talents left over from Germany after the demise of Hydra. And these talents have never lost their loyalty to Hydra. Tony could already guess what happened next, so these people later lay on SHIELD and resurrected Hydra. Leon nodded. Yes, that's the fact. Hydra wants to assassinate our dad because they want to infiltrate SHIELD, and Dad is one of the leaders of SHIELD and is blocking the way. Tony sat down again slowly and pursed his lips. How many Hydra people are there in SHIELD now? Does the director know about it? The next second, Leon's words made him stand up immediately. There are tens of thousands of people in SHIELD, and most of them are Hydra. The former director was also a Hydra, but the current director is not, but he is even more Hydra than Hydra. What? Tony exclaimed. Does this mean that this organization is basically affiliated with Hydra? That's not true. Leon pointed to his ear. Judging from the information I've heard in the past few days, the main people in charge of SHIELD are fine for the time being. The people in Hydra are just the backbone and elites. Just the backbone and the elite. Tony was speechless for a while. How different is this from everything? The organization founded by his father was just handed over to the enemy by those idiots. He paced back and forth beside the workbench. No, Leon, it is our responsibility to solve the problems left by the old guy. We must destroy this organization. I agree. Leon has no objection. Anyway, this organization has no strength but always fantasizes about being the savior. I can't stand it either. And this is consistent with my revenge plan. Leon waved his hand at the holographic projector, which projected a picture of Nick Fury. Nick Fury, the current director of SHIELD, is extremely controlling and wants to take the security issues of the entire world into his own hands. It sounds like he does resemble Hydra. Wait, why isn't he Hydra? Tony asked. I don't know, maybe his former director is worried that he will threaten his status after joining the organization. Leon waved again, and a file package popped up on the screen. This is the list of Hydra members within SHIELD that I compiled and packaged. I have put all the evidence and identities in it. Tony, you can then find a way to send this document to Nick Fury to cause chaos among them first. Remember, don't just let Jarvis send it, they will trace it back. Then when they are almost in chaos, we will release these documents to completely expose Hydra. The whole world will spontaneously stand against Hydra. We can take this opportunity to find out the truth behind our parents' death. Whether it's evidence or the murderer, we need all of them. Leon showed an unfriendly smile. And in the process, I will also show my power to the world. How to show it? Tony was stunned for a moment. Forcing them to use weapons of mass destruction, intercontinental missiles, hydrogen bombs, anything will do. Then I went up to physically resist a missile, and then knocked down one of their military bases with one punch. Leon poured himself a glass of water. This not only shows my defensive power, but also my offensive power, and also shows my ruthless attitude when I strike. Presumably, after that, even if I come in and out of the house wearing a Superman uniform, no one will dare to come to my door. Tony imagined the scene of Leon being bombed by missiles, and opened his mouth. Isn't this too risky? Don't worry, I'm not looking for death in a hurry. I must be sure before I act. Besides, can't I hide if I can't withstand the missile? Leon said, taking out a box from behind. I still want to become stronger, but I'm not prepared to die. Tony, come and see, this is the uniform I made, how about it? He opened the box and took out a gold, blue, and red Superman uniform. This uniform does not have traditional underwear to be worn outside. It is entirely navy blue, with an S logo embedded in a golden inverted pentagon on the chest, and a red cape fixed on the shoulders. The Superman suit made of Kevlar fiber is bulletproof, soft, and most importantly, handsome. Even though Tony's heart was heavy, he couldn't help but comment, "It looks good, I'm glad you didn't wear your underwear outside," and the S, I remember it means hope, right? No, it means Stark now, the initials of Stark. Leon played the S. Starting tomorrow, I will wear this uniform and go to Afghanistan to eliminate the Ten Rings gang. From now on, I will be Superman. You seem to have forgotten that you have me, and I will go with you. Tony pulled Leon seriously. This is my own trouble, and I must solve it myself. But you still have to implement the plan we just made. Leon pointed at the projection. I think you should be very impatient to find out the truth. Tony shook his head. But that doesn't stop me from investigating the truth and going 10,000 kilometers away to deal with some hateful thugs. Tony has been paying attention to the Ten Rings gang these days. Those guys have great power from Afghanistan to the Middle East. Within their sphere of influence, ordinary people face the suffering of being oppressed and plundered every day. Even if Leon doesn't say anything today, Tony will soon choose to take action to dismantle this gang. Okay, but we must be cautious about SHIELD matters and try not to be traced to us in the early stage. That means a lot of trouble. It's up to you. Tony looked at Nick Fury's face on the projection and asked, but I'm curious, you should be able to find the base of the Hydra organization, why don't you just take action? Leon shook his head. Hydra's top management has a prominent status in various countries around the world. Those bases belong to them. If I take action directly, I may be manipulated by public opinion and be known as a dictator or a provocateur of war. Although I'm not afraid, after all, even if I face that kind of situation, I can only take action a few more times. But if you can avoid trouble in advance by using your brain, why do you have to wait until trouble comes to your door and then have to deal with it with your hands? Tony nodded in approval. I know you are a man who doesn't like to be passive, just like me. Leon ignored his rude words. This is the reason why I want to show my strength to the world. After all, I can't never use my superpowers, and my identity will always be discovered one day. And when my identity is exposed, the first thing that all forces will do is to test me. However, others are beginning to test and reveal their intentions of intrusion. Can I still bear it? But if I knock on the door directly, whether the other party is out to maintain the dignity of their power or to avenge one of their own, the result will be the same. In the end, it may turn out that I have to eliminate most of the armed forces in the world before I can return to a peaceful daily life. In this case, I might as well make a plan and bring out a public enemy of the world, directly in front of the global forces, and show all the power that is enough to scare them. Tony couldn't help but applaud. Good idea, you made the most right choice, Leon. Thank you for the compliment, I just don't like to be disturbed from my normal life. Leon put away his uniform. That's all I have to do, but I've given you the final answer. Now Tony, you can finally rest assured. Tony smiled. I wasn't worried either. By the way, let me ask a question, why do you want to play Superman and dress like a pajama baby? Forgive me for being blunt. Don't you want to be a superhero? No, I just like Superman, but I won't become a hero of justice like him. Leon hugged the box and left. Maybe I will be a hero who will draw a sword to help when there is injustice, but I will do good things and save the world. Let's forget it. Tony shook his head from behind. That's really a pity. I've already thought of the name of our hero group. Super Iron Man Brothers, what do you think? I feel very childish. Leon's voice disappeared down the corridor. It sounds like two kindergarten babies. A new day has arrived. After the rain, the sky cleared, and the sun shone on the world, and Leon began to rush to the battlefield. This is the second time he has flown to Afghanistan, and it can be said that he is familiar with the route. It took a few minutes to catch up and passed a dozen Boeing planes. Leon floated in the air, looking down at the blue world under the clouds. His eyes moved from time to time, locking onto each target more accurately than radar. It was already night in Afghanistan at this time, and most of the bases of the Ten Rings gang were under martial law and preparing to rest. However, there are always some crazy terrorists who will take advantage of the darkness to harass civilians. It was this group of people that Leon first targeted. It's you first. He saw two armed terrorists kicking down the doors of civilians' houses. So he tilted his body and fell downward instantly. The biological force field shrouded Leon like a god of death and came silently. When he landed, he spread out the force field, and the ground beneath his feet cracked in all directions like a spider web, making a dull falling sound. The sound startled the two terrorists who had just kicked open the door. They turned around with guns in hand, and when they saw Leon in strange clothes, they immediately came up cursing. "Dari, are you Iranian or Tajikistan?" Leon asked in Dari. He has learned most of the official languages on the planet in recent days, and can understand the Dari swear words that the two of them are talking about. However, the two of them were indifferent and even wanted to put a gun to his head. Leon shook his head. "It seems you don't want to communicate. Goodbye then." He stretched out his hands, grabbed their necks like phantoms, raised them above their heads, and gently twisted them. There were two crisp clicks, and the two terrorists drooped their heads and stopped breathing. Leon threw the body away casually, and just as he was about to leave, he thought of something and looked back at the silent family hugging each other in the room. This is a typical Pashtun family. The elderly father has a beard, deeply sunken eyes, sallow skin and cracked lips. The mother and two daughters wore robes and dresses. The combination of brown and orange is a kind of Pashtun national costume. They all looked at Leon in fear, their bodies trembling, and they dared not speak. They could only desperately hide the heads of their two daughters in their arms. "You don't have to worry about the consequences of these two people dying here," Leon said in Pashto, the official language of Afghanistan. "It's late at night. Go back to sleep. When you wake up tomorrow morning, the nearby terrorist organizations will disappear." After saying that, Leon turned around and floated in the air, scanning his eyes to lock the next target. "Please, please." Just as he was about to leave, a childish voice suddenly called from inside the room. Leon looked back. It was the youngest girl in the family. The girl, who was 7 or 8 years old, was covered by her frightened mother, but she still struggled to lift her mother's hand and asked timidly, Are you Superman?" Leon wears his own uniform and red cape, appears at critical moments, and can fly. He really looks like a Superman. But Leon was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect that Hollywood's cultural output would be so powerful, and that families suffering in Afghanistan would actually know about Superman. But think about it, a few years ago, before the Americans came here, there must have been a rich entertainment life here. "I'm not, but it's okay if you call me that." Leon first answered the little girl's question with a smile, and then comforted the two parents. "It's okay, I will leave soon, and so will the guys from the 10 Rings gang." "So are you here to help us?" the little girl suddenly asked again. After receiving the answer, she became bolder. "Just like you beat up those bad guys on TV." Leon was silent for a moment before nodding. "Yes, I'm just here to fight off the bad guys. They won't bully you in the future." "Great, Superman, you are awesome." The little girl cheered, broke away from her mother's hand and ran towards Leon, trying to hug his thigh. Leon laughed dumbly, landed on the ground, squatted down and held down the little carrot head. "What's your name?" "Shafika. My name is Shafika Mazari." "Okay, Shafika, listen to me. You go back to your room now, lie down on the bed, and have a good dream, so that when you wake up tomorrow morning, all the bad guys will be gone, okay?" The little girl didn't agree. She looked at Leon with her big eyes. "Are you leaving, Superman?" "Shafika." Leon also answered the question and tapped the little girl's forehead with his index finger. "Next time, you can't talk to strangers easily, and you must listen to your mother." After saying that, Leon stood up and took a step back, flying into the clouds with a sound that broke through the air. The little girl's family all ran to the yard and looked at the dark night sky, so shocked that they couldn't help themselves. "Allah bless you, that is really Superman." The old father made a blessing gesture. This night, the family suddenly had expectations for tomorrow's life. Leon quickly cleared Afghanistan of any terrorists who were harassing civilians. Each time he just showed up, punched, and left. A set of processes ends in 1 second. It takes no more than 10 minutes in total. After clearing out the soldiers, Leon began to deal with the terrorist organization base. If it is a normal strategic attack, it should attack small bases first, eat away at the terrorist forces step by step, and finally expel them. But Leon will definitely not do that. His first stop was the largest base of the Ten Rings gang. He was flying in the clouds, his cloak rustling in the high-altitude wind. At a glance, there are more than 70 people patrolling the base below. Under Leon's perspective, the more than 4,000 sleeping combat members remaining in the base were also clearly visible. In addition, he also saw the Jericho missile in a tent in the camp. It was a powerful weapon developed by Tony not long ago. One cannonball could flatten a hill. Why are there Jericho missiles here? Tony, you are really helping others. Although Tony felt very guilty now, Leon still couldn't help but talk. He even took out his cell phone. Jarvis, Leon called, take photos of everything I see later and send them to Tony after the battle. Especially the Stark weapons we saw during the process, every detail was photographed for him to see. Leon is going to keep Tony awake all night with guilt today. Okay, Master Leon, the camera equipment has been started for you. Jarvis's voice came from the mobile phone. Leon nodded silently and fell down. The battle has begun. This time, he did not cover up his traces, and fell into the Ten Rings gang camp like a meteorite, so fast that it caused flames to rub in the air. Boom! The deafening sound of falling echoed through the camp. The next moment the alarm bell was sounded, calls for enemy attacks came one after another, and the terrorists quickly gathered. Leon stood in the middle of the camp, and when someone appeared, he would use his heat ray to kill him. Soon the terrorists discovered that half of their own party was already dead before the fighting started. Some people were awakened just after falling asleep at night, and when they encountered this bad news, they already shouted about monsters and began to flee. However, they were quickly killed by the remaining people. But the rest were not much better. They didn't even dare to show their faces, and hid behind the tent, pulling out grenades, grenade guns, rocket launchers, tank missiles, and Jericho missiles, planning to use a wave of fire to beat the invading monsters to dust. Leon saw every move of the terrorists clearly. But he did not counterattack immediately, but stood quietly and waited. Soon, a large number of explosive weapons such as grenades and rockets were launched. Leon remained motionless, but the heat ray swept away and the round ended. It wasn't until the vehicle-mounted missile started igniting that he took off. Jarvis, are there any satellites above us now? Master Leon, there is a U.S. military satellite operating over Afghanistan. Jarvis responded immediately and began to analyze. As long as there is a small or medium-sized conflict, it will immediately monitor it. And 700 meters away, there is a local reporter secretly filming. Reporter, are you a war reporter? Leon nodded and puffed out the golden S on his chest. It seems that the audience is all in place. How can no one care about Superman's first battle? He glanced around and immediately looked for the reporter. The base of the terrorist organization is sandwiched between several small hills, making it easy to defend but difficult to attack. The man was lying in the bushes on the hillside of one of the hills. It was packed tightly and dressed in the local ethnic style. Judging from his mixed black and white beard, he is obviously not young, he is a local middle-aged reporter. Such people have experienced the peace period in Afghanistan, the most dangerous war after the country was invaded, and the most abject displacement. They tend to hate the Ten Commandments gang more and are not afraid of sacrifice. This is a group of people who only want to expose the atrocities of terrorist organizations with their own lives in exchange for peace in their home and country. Is that really Superman? At this time, the middle-aged reporter also saw a figure flying in the air in the distance. The man had a bright red cape behind him, a tall figure, and a face as handsome as Superman in the movie. People didn't want to forget him, but they couldn't remember it when they thought about it. No matter how you look at it, it's all superhuman and superhuman. Is it possible that there really is a Superman in this world? He is here to deal with the terrorist organizations below. The reporter found it extremely absurd. But the scene that his device had just recorded, of Superman fighting against thousands of armies alone, was so real. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. If Superman can save this country, then all my money for the rest of my life will be used to support DC and Warner Brothers. DC Comics was acquired by Warner Brothers in the 20th century. The middle-aged reporter gritted his teeth when he suddenly saw a fire light up in the camp, and then hot flames spurted out, and 6 2 to 3 meter long vehicle-mounted missiles flew into the air. That's a missile. Not good. The reporter looked at Leon with eyes wide open. Superman, get out of the way, get out of the way. However, instead of retreating, Leon stepped forward. He accelerated in the air, holding a mobile phone in one hand and holding a fist in front of the other, and the arrows collided with the missiles. Boom! One missile detonated, and then several other missiles exploded one after another. Deafening explosions echoed across the hills, smoke quickly filled the air, and firelight illuminated the branches of every tree. The violent wind from the explosion bent the surrounding trees one by one. The middle-aged reporter's turban was blown away, revealing a head of dry, yellow hair that had been blown upside down. He stared blankly at the smoke clouds in the sky, his blue eyes red with flames all over the sky, feeling uneasy in his heart. Under the frontal bombardment of 6 missiles, no one could survive, and even leaving a whole corpse was a luxury. But that's Superman. Even the bullets below couldn't hurt him, so he took the initiative to catch the missile. What if? As if responding to the expectations of the middle-aged reporter. Suddenly a strong wind blew in the clouds and smoke. Hoo! The strong wind was fierce but not fast. It blew away the mushroom cloud that was about to rise in a few seconds, revealing an intact figure. It's Superman. Superman's cape was still flying behind him, and he wasn't hurt at all. No, let alone injuring him, those missiles couldn't even give him a hint of gunpowder blackness. By Allah, I knew it. I knew he could do it. The middle-aged reporter jumped up, his face flushed with excitement, and he pumped his fists excitedly while jumping, not caring that he had been exposed. He looked at Superman, as if he saw hope at this moment. How many days and nights have we been looking forward to it, not expecting the intervention of international organizations, but looking forward to the arrival of a miracle. The terrorists in the camp were as excited as the middle-aged reporter. They also jumped up and down and shouted, but they shouted, "Monster, that's a monster." After a while, gunfire rang out among the noisy terrorists, and another group of deserters or those who did not want to be cannon fodder were shot to death. Leon waited in the air for a while, showing an interested expression. Oh, we finally moved out the Jericho missiles. We plan to die together. The firepower of the Jericho missile covers a very wide range. After the explosion, the entire area within 2 kilometers will be enveloped in flames. This group of terrorists wanted to use Jericho at such a close distance because they planned to drag Leon to die with them. That's just right. I haven't seen the power of Tony's masterpiece with my own eyes, and now I can finally experience it for myself. Jarvis, don't forget to record it and send it to Tony. Leave a message asking him how he was able to sleep. Okay, Master Leon, I've been recording. Jarvis is always so considerate. After waiting for a few minutes, the Jericho missile was finally understood by the terrorists, pushed to the open ground, and successfully ignited. 3 Jericho missiles were launched at the same time, and the inventory in the base was emptied at once. The 3 missiles accelerated in the air and disintegrated immediately after approaching the target. Dozens or hundreds of small missiles blocked all Leon's retreat routes. This is a coverage bombing with no blind spots, and Tony's invention is indeed top-notch. It is indeed Tony's latest work. Leon also praised it. Suddenly he thought of something and glanced at the reporter on the mountainside. But I have to leave for a while. After speaking, Leon's figure instantly disappeared among the missiles. Time is running out. He appeared next to the reporter like a flash, lifted it from the bushes, then flew to another hilltop 3 kilometers away in the blink of an eye, dropped it, and returned to the center of the missile in an instant. Don't worry, I'm back. It shouldn't be too late, right? Leon said to himself as he looked at the approaching missiles. The Jericho missile is extremely fast, and its strategic positioning is for indiscriminate bombing in the shortest time. Almost as soon as Leon returned to his original position, the missile group's concentrated fire was already approaching. However, Leon did not want his carefully woven uniform to be blackened by missiles, so he punched quickly and continuously. Countless fist shadows appeared simultaneously in a 360-degree position, just like countless hands growing on Leon's body. Almost in an instant, all the missiles were detonated at the same time. Boom! A more violent explosion began than before. The sound of tearing through the sky, the flames rising into the sky, and the smoke covering thousands of meters. The strong shock wave spread at the moment of the explosion, and the trees and mountains within the range were first shattered and then engulfed by the explosion. 3 kilometers away, the reporter felt as if his eyes had suddenly changed and he was knocked to the ground by the shock wave. He rolled around on the ground a few times, staggered and stood up with a mess of clothes, staring blankly at the mushroom cloud in the distance that seemed to reach straight into the sky. Even though he was so far away, he could still feel the intense heat. What kind of missile is that? How could it be so terrifying? The reporter repeated blankly. He still remembered what he had just seen, the missile disintegrating into dozens of small missiles in the air. Such missiles are simply impossible to counterattack. If it were used to deal with the local defense army, the tragic outcome for our own side would be unimaginable. Also, Superman, where has he gone? He just saved me. The reporter leaned weakly against the tree and looked at the mushroom cloud. He knew I was hiding there, so he saved me. He is such a good man. Wait a minute, could he have gone back to deal with the missiles? The next second, a hurricane blew away the mushroom cloud, revealing Superman's figure, once again confirming the reporter's guess. My God, he is simply a god. The reporter exclaimed, looking at Superman who was still unharmed. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.